finally, thanks to UK Centre for Animal Law, which is Tiffany and Paula, and Our Dogs for their support of our APDAWGs as well. So this is a huge topic. It's got loads of moving parts. I've tried to sort of bring together representatives from every part of the chain. Presentations will be 5 minutes apart from the first overview by Vicki. We may go obviously later now to 9:30 or maybe 10 o'clock, so bear with us. Use the hashtag APDAWG on your social media, on Twitter, and I'll retweet the best ones. So over to Lisa to introduce the first speaker, please.
I think Lisa was on mute.
Yeah, Lisa, I think you're muted.
Here we are.
There we go.
Technology is really not working for us tonight, is it?
It's not.
Oh my goodness. Right. Let's get started. So our first speaker, and we have 5 minutes each, so we're really going to try and make it snappy tonight so that we have so much time for questions at the end, is Vicki Graham. Vicki Graham is from Southeast Dog Rescue, a non-profit, non-destruct organisation based in Kent that aims to rescue, rehabilitate and rehome dogs across the UK. South East Dog Rescue is run entirely by volunteers. So thank you and welcome to Vicki.
Hi there. Hello, everyone. So I've just got a little introduction first and we'll go from there. So we're here this evening to discuss welfare issues related to overseas dog rescue. This is a very hot button topic and often draws vitriol from those in favour or against foreign rescue. Sadly, this means that all too often, any chance of a proper discussion of the topic is toxic and results in unnecessary abuse. Our aim this evening is to have a balanced, open, constructive discussion, a discussion about what happens when irresponsible and pop-up rescues are allowed to import dogs from abroad without proper practices and accountability, how that affects the dogs, the families who adopt them, what this means for welfare and animal professionals and the general public at large. However, whilst there are far-reaching issues associated with poor practice, we also want to highlight that there are rescues who do tremendous responsible work in finding overseas dogs the right homes in the UK, as well as running welfare programmes in the country in which the respective rescues operate. This discussion is not anti-overseas rescue. It is an attempt to shine a light on why many innocent dogs are being failed by the very people professing to save them. These dogs are victims, and if we want welfare to improve, this is a discussion we need to have. On that note, I will start the discussion with regards to a significant issue that is affecting the rescue world itself, a devastating lack of accountability from some importing rescues. So, as noted, I'm from South East Dog Rescue, non-destruct rescue that specialises in dogs with mild to severe behaviour issues. By non-destruct, we mean that if a dog's behaviour issues are too complicated and they cannot be rehomed in a family environment, they will live their lives as sanctuary dogs at our centre. We have several sanctuary dogs who came from Romania. Unfortunately, their lives were saved because the importing and responsible rescues approached us themselves for helps with issues they could not manage. Tonight, I speak on behalf of myself alone, and if anyone wants to discuss the topic further with me, they can contact me via Twitter on the handle in the accompanying PowerPoint slide. Could we go to the next slide, please, Tiffany? Thank you. So why are we seeing more people needing help rehoming an overseas dog that they've adopted through a rescue? As the owner surrender coordinator at South East Dog Rescue, the trend that I'm seeing when someone wants to relinquish a dog from overseas is the failure of the importing rescue to honour or even provide rescue backup. As a specialist rescue that works with behavioural issues, we are getting as many as 8 such applications a week. To understand why this is so significant a problem, it's first worth discussing what is rescue backup. Next slide, please, Tiffany. Thank you. Rescue backup can be defined in different ways. In short, though, a rescue should be committed to every dog it takes on for its entire life. This means that if a home does not work out due to unforeseen behaviour challenges, or a family's circumstances change drastically for any reason, a rescue should take that dog back into its care without judgment and, if necessary, in an emergency. Additionally, rescues should offer support to foster and adoptive families, especially in the first few months while a dog is decompressing in its new environment. Next slide, please. So what happens when rescue backup is not practiced or honoured by the importing rescue? Simply, it means these dogs are put at risk if they have nowhere to which they can be safely returned when a family cannot keep a dog. All too often, a rescue does not practice or honour RBU. It tells adoptees to address the situation in one of two ways. They offer to send the dog back to the country of origin, or they suggest putting to sleep. These adoptees contact us in a state of utter desperation because they feel that either choice is a death sentence, especially after the importing rescue has advertised this poor dog as coming from hell on earth. These families are on the receiving end of emotional blackmail, and so are we, knowing that a poor dog is in this situation and we may not be able to help due to limited resources. The most common reasons for contact from these adoptees is fear-based aggression, resource guarding, and bite incidents. To demonstrate the devastation that occurs when rescues are irresponsible and do not offer or honour rescue backup, I offer the following case study that came through the kennels we run with New Hope Animal Rescue. Next slide, please, Tiffany. So this is a beautiful boy, Toby, and if we could have the next slide as well, thank you. So Toby is a beautiful older Labrador. He was sent over from Romania by the importing rescue with a supposed clean bill of health. However, on arrival, it soon became clear this was not the case. He was in immense pain and his ears were in a terrible state. The new owners took him to a vet and he needed a total ear canal ablation in both ears. This cost the new owners £12,000, money which most people would not have, especially when insurance wouldn't have been covered this as a pre-existing condition. He also was not neutered. Sadly, shortly after the surgery, he bit one of his new owners and it believed it was a response to the pain and confusion he'd suffered. On Saturday, the 13th of March, a rescue colleague was contacted and the owner stated that Toby would be put to sleep in several hours if he was not removed from the house. This started an amazing network of rescue people who came together that evening. Toby was rescued from the home, taken into kennels, and his life was saved. He has proven himself to be a delight, and once he heals from his surgery, he will be found an appropriate placement for his future. Next slide, please. What does Toby's case tell us? Well, Toby's case tells us that there was utterly shameful failures by a rescue importing a dog with no meaningful rescue backup in place and no sense of accountability. He was at very genuine risk of being put to sleep. The importing rescue should have found an immediate alternative placement for Toby. Instead, another rescue had to step in and take on his lifelong commitment. It should be noted that Toby was not only at risk of being put to sleep due to the bite incident, but the extraordinary cost of the surgery could have forced the owners into this decision as well. In situations like Toby's, other rescues are having to use their resources and funds to save dogs who are being let down by irresponsible rescues. This could not come at a worse time, especially when we're being crippled by the intake of welfare cases and adolescent dogs bought as puppies during the pandemic. The lack of meaningful RBU was also an indicator of the slipshod way in which this rescue operates overall. It sent Toby over in immense pain and there was no disclosure of his medical issues, even though his ears were clearly causing problems on arrival. It also did not neuter him. This should be standard practice of any half-decent rescue. In the current pandemic of backyard breeding in the UK, though, this is even more heinous. Toby's case exemplifies exactly why RBU is not optional and how some rescues feel they can operate irresponsibly with impunity. Next slide, please. So why is the lack of RBU becoming a more prominent issue with dogs rescued from overseas? A lot of it is due to a lack of real experience and knowledge, especially amongst newly formed rescues. Too many people are setting up rescues from their living rooms, predominantly using social media, importing dogs without any extensive or proper background in overseas dog rescue or behaviour. In most cases, they will never meet the dogs they import. They are sent direct from the shelter to a family home without proper assessments. When something goes wrong, these people don't know what to do due to a lack of experience. A lot of these rescues do offer RBU, but have absolutely no understanding of what exactly that entails. Therefore, being unequipped to deal with the scenario of a biting dog, for example, they put the onus on the adopter to resolve the situation, not understanding that they are responsible. It should be made clear, though, that not all rescues that let dogs down are pop-ups. There are registered charities who fail to honour RBU in any meaningful way, leaving smaller organisations to pick up the pieces. Next slide, please. So what can be done to stop rescues who don't offer RBU? Well, how long's a piece of string? But here's a few suggestions. As rescues in the UK are not governed by licensing, there's nothing to stop anyone setting up a rescue. In fact, someone could be setting up a rescue on Facebook during this conversation. This is an area which needs addressing as quickly as possible, and regulations need to be introduced. The subject of direct adoptions with no proper assessments or established rescue base in the UK should also be reviewed as a matter of urgency. There needs to be an increase in accountability, which could be achieved through proper licensing of animal rescues and robust inspection of centres. More immediately though, mandatory dual microchipping could be introduced with an importing rescues details, so responsibility cannot be denied. This would also work very nicely with Tuck's Law's current campaign to ensure that RBU registration remains on a microchip for life. Finally, just as we educate the public about how to buy a puppy responsibility, we need to educate the public as to what constitutes a responsible rescue, including when adopting a dog from abroad. Advice should include establishing whether a rescue offers rescue backup, and if so, what does it mean by that? That a rescue should have a UK base to which a dog can be returned, that assessments are done by experienced overseas dog people in the UK before going to a family home, and that dogs are vaccinated for distemper amongst other things, and neutered and spayed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Victoria, and we're so pleased that Toby had a good situation at the end there. You know, that was just a horrendous example to start with, but I'm sure it's not reflective of all the rescues, and we're going to hear so many more accounts this evening as well of what's being done in the field. So next we have Jordan Shelley, who is a behaviourist and expert in stray and feral dogs. Jordan works for a non-profit whole group focused on animal law, and has worked and taught in rescues in various parts of the world, and fostered over 300 dogs in the past 10 years from the UK and abroad. And he has a fascination with the behaviour of street dogs in particular, and helping define behaviour and suitability for rehoming. So welcome, Jordan, and over to yourself.
Good evening. Please excuse the cat that might start singing in the background. He's been having a whole sing-song through the last talk.
We don't allow cats at the dog, Jordan.
Oh dear. Well, good evening, everybody. I'm fortunate enough to have been able to work with and observe street dogs in a number of different countries with vastly different environments and cultural attitudes towards dogs, and have always been in awe of their plasticity and adaptability in every instance. It is this plasticity and the dog's amazing ability to communicate with a vast repertoire of intricate appeasing behaviours to other dogs, humans and other species that have led it to being so successful that it has become man's best friend, and the number of dogs is nearing 1 billion globally. Roughly 83% of these dogs are thought to live unrestrained as street dogs in some capacity or another, which brings me on nicely to the categorizations often used by researchers studying both restrained and unrestrained dogs. Here is a little overview. The first grouping is restricted dogs, which are totally dependent upon people. All their essential needs are intentionally met by humans, who also restrict their movement, which can include guard dogs and pet dogs. The next grouping is family dogs, which have owners on whom they depend, although they may be free to roam in some instances. Their reproduction, however, is supervised by humans. Then we move on to the largest grouping, which is stray dogs, which include dogs living in a human-dominated context. It's a very diverse group, and it includes dogs that still have a social bond with humans, possibly abandoned or born in human settings, and which tend to associate food with particular households, people, or areas. They have close proximity to people and beg from them rather than scavenging. The second group is stray dogs that exhibit varying degrees of tolerance and fear towards humans. They do not have the same level of habituation and relationship as the former group do with people, and they tend to scavenge rather than beg. These dogs are attracted to human settings by the availability of food and shelter, regardless of whether these resources are intentionally provided by people or just casually associated with them. Feral dogs, which include all dogs living in a wild and free state with no direct food or shelter, intentionally supplied by humans, showing no evidence of socialization with humans, and display active avoidance and in some cases aggression towards people. They occupy mainly natural, non-urban environments. The distinction between feral, stray, neighborhood, village dogs, owned and street dogs is a matter of degree. The picture's rather complicated when it comes to an animal being so layered. It's a little like an onion. There's epigenetics, genetics, environment all at play. Dogs may also change categories in the course of their lives. Social adjustment based on learning is one of the most distinctive cognitive features of man's best friend. So what does this all mean with regards to how to select dogs to be rehomed in the UK for whom this change in lifestyle will be beneficial, not detrimental to their welfare and emotional well-being? The answer is really that we have to look past humanity's obsessive desire to categorize and label dogs and instead look at each individual and assess its specific welfare needs. The central question when rescuing a dog should always be asking that individual how the experience is for them, while taking into consideration both the dog's level of habituation to people and how heavily that individual's repertoire of appeasement behaviors relies on the ability to give space, as our Western society is highly restrictive when it comes to our dog's level of freedom, space, and ability to display natural behavior. This restriction far too often leads to maladaptive behaviors for dogs that are born here that have known no different, let alone those that have. So in essence, there is no one size fits all when it comes to looking at these categories. And there is no one size fits all answer. We have to look at the individual dog in question and meet its needs. As a final note, I'd just like to say that over my years working for different organisations and fostering dogs from the UK and abroad, I've met many friends, people and organisations that are doing an outstanding job and always ensure the dog's welfare is sacrosanct. As well, unfortunately, there are others that are not doing such a great job, and some that seem to simply be exploiting animals under the guise of rescue. I'd like to drive home the point that this isn't an issue that is reserved to just foreign rescues and sanctuaries, but it also is to those in the UK too. It's frankly absurd that anyone can go and get a van, put some logos on it and start operating a rescue or a sanctuary, and that there isn't some kind of mandatory registration and regulation to ensure the high levels of welfare standards the general public expects and frankly should demand to be integral to the process of rescue of our beautiful sentient best friends. Thank you.
Thank you so much to Jordan, and I think that, you know, there are some themes coming through already in relation to regulation and what we could be doing more so in Parliament to look at these very many issues. And we're getting to hear about what's happening and being done well, but also where some of the issues are. So that's helpful already this evening. Our next speakers are the Canine Angels, who often come to Parliament for our APDAWG meetings. Co-founder Victoria Pearce is a trustee and director who's working as a volunteer for the charity. And Rebecca Smith is the former mayoress of Tunbridge Wells, my goodness, in Kent, and is a Canine Angels trustee, director and head of Rehoming. And the Canine Angels support rescue from Romania and Greece, and are here to talk about their experiences tonight. So thank you so much for joining us again, and over to you. Thank you. Oh, do we have sound?
Is the sound on?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's you, Victoria. You can start.
No, I pre-recorded it.
Oh.
Welfare and well-being. We'll talk a little bit about how we are hopefully working more effectively.
I'll restart it for you.
It's fine.
That's
on my behalf because it's playing sound through mine. Just give me a moment and I'll read it.
Thank you.
Here, that's all right.
Through vendor select.
Okay, just 1 second. Tonight's the night that all the tech is just not working for us. Just 1 second.
While we're waiting, I know that there's a lot of chat going down the side already, and please also put your questions into the Q&A and we'll be able to take those after we've heard from our speakers. Last time we had over an hour of questions. It was fantastic. So please start thinking of your questions already, and I'm having a look at your comments too.
Hello, everybody. Firstly, we'd like to say a huge thank you to APDAWG for extending the invitation to the Canine Angels. Just to quickly take you through the content of what we'll present this evening. We'll start with who we are and what we've done. And then we'd like to share how we continue to manage and overcome some of the challenges we've faced and the activities that both prevent and mitigate some of the challenges in dog rescue related to welfare and well-being. We'll talk a little bit about how we are hopefully working more effectively through vendor selection related to transportation. Then talk about areas of increased focus based on the areas of need we encounter. And finally, a recap on how people can help and contact us. So, who are we? We're a small team of passionate volunteers who have each taken on numerous roles within the charity. We are very fortunate to have Sue Barker OBE, who adopted her adorable dog Batty from Canine Angels, as our patron. The two co-founders of the original three, Victoria and Polar, are responsible for fundraising, fostering, frontline duties and media. Rebecca Rehoming, Sue Business and Finance, Judy Educational Outreach and Administration, and Fergus Business Manager. The trustees are ably assisted by our team member Tony and Alana, who kindly fundraise, Federica, who manages our Twitter, and Michelle, who helps with rescue backup. We are fortunate to have highly committed adopters and foster carers in the UK who help to ensure that no dog is left without support. And not forgetting our incredible international angels who work tirelessly on the front line of rescue to help dogs in desperate need. So what have the Canine Angels achieved in the last 9 years? Well, we've rehomed hundreds of dogs, mainly from Romania, Greece, and the Thai meat trade. We've funded a shelter construction and vet facility. We've sterilised close to 2,000 dogs, plus many cats too. We provide food and medical care monthly to our trusted rescuer network. Canine Angels have raised approximately £550,000 to date. We continue to raise and spread awareness for rescue dogs in the media. We lobby for change with local and national governments in these countries to facilitate much needed change. Fundraising activities include climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, cycling hundreds of miles, wing walking, walking hundreds of miles, online auctions, pop-up shops and dog shows. And lastly, but not least, we visit schools to teach children responsible pet care. So how do we overcome challenges through process and governance? Let's talk about rescue backup. If you fail to plan, plan to fail. Learn from mistakes, seek feedback and continuous learning to improve the process. A pre-assessment of dogs is carried out firstly by the rescuers and the foster carers in the country of origin. If the team are planning a visit, we ensure we see potential dogs before they travel, so we can add a further level of assessment with our knowledge of UK conditions and potential adopters. Behaviour checks. Members of the trustees frequently foster initially and assess the dogs. We pride ourselves on matching the dogs to the adopter. The needs of the dogs are paramount in all our processes. We have a strong team of adopters who will all undertake fostering, basic training and assessment once the dogs are in the UK, especially from our team member, Michelle. So let's move on to health checks. Before leaving, all dogs have several health checks, tests and assessments. All vaccinations are carried out within the required timeframes, and any pre-existing conditions are made aware of to the adopters. For example, if a dog has an injury, like in the case of Snowy, where the adopter was fully aware that he had had several surgeries on his leg due to a car accident, was prepared for potential hurdles along the way and was happy to wait until the dog had recovered, had physio and was fit to come to the UK. Earlier, we talked about the importance of transport procedures and protocols. Selecting a quality vendor to manage transportation has a direct correlation to stress and welfare in transit. We use Ellie Pet Transportation, who provide a comprehensive service and are fully compliant in following procedures and protocols for dog transportations across Europe. They have 2 drivers and a nanny on board to care for the dogs at all times. Passports are checked to ensure dogs are fit, healthy, and correctly prepared for travel. Ellie Transport provide a purpose-built van with air conditioning and strongly built containers to secure and look after the dogs in their care. The charity is kept informed at all times of their progress.
It's a long slide.
Is that it finished?
No, I'm not sure why that slide's for so long.
Oh,
Okay.
Just move that one on if possible. There you go.
Okay, so what will the Canine Angels focus on going forward? Canine Angels will continue to provide food and medical care and rehome a small amount of dogs. We know some adopters will only adopt dogs from overseas. We feel our main focus will be on prevention in terms of how we deploy ourselves. Prevention is at the heart of solving the stray dog problem, and we want to put on more fundraising, educational and awareness efforts into our spay and neuter campaign. We believe prevention is better than the cure, and the numbers speak for themselves. By spaying just one bitch and her offspring, you are potentially preventing up to 67,000 puppies being born within a 6-year period. It costs just €47 to sterilise a dog in Romania, so very inexpensive compared with the UK. For such a small charity, we're extremely proud to have successfully rehomed close to 1,000 dogs. We are equally proud to have prevented tens of thousands of unwanted dogs being put back on the streets and adding to the problem through our spay and neuter programme. Finding a dog in need of a home is sadly all too easy for all the wrong reasons. Matching the dog to the right home is of great importance. It's time-consuming and requires a robust process. Around 2% of dogs rehomed have been returned to the charity. Our rule when adopting and rehoming is if it doesn't work out, then the dog must come back to Canine Angels, as we don't want one of our dogs ending up on the UK rehoming system when it's already been very stretched. There's approximately 120,000 dogs needing homes up and down the UK. There is sadly no shortage of dogs, just a shortage of good homes. So how can you help us help dogs? Well, you can donate money to help us spay a stray, or donate your time by joining the Growing Angels volunteer team. Donate your time, expertise and love by fostering or adopting, or donate the gift of insight by sharing our posts and tweets. Thank you for listening. The Canine Angels would like to see a world where there are no stray dogs to help. Please help us make this a reality.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. That was fascinating. And interesting again, some similar themes coming up regarding Romania in particular, and showing all of the work that goes into rehoming. Who would have thought that dogs needed a nanny? My goodness. I'm learning so much tonight. So our next speaker is Fermin Perez from Scooby Shelter, Sanctuary and Rehoming in Spain, president and founder of Scooby Shelter, who was started rescuing animals there and changing attitudes. And thanks to his work, hangings have stopped. So if you can tell us a bit more about that. But neglect and abandonment, unfortunately, has continued. So the Scooby charity has been educating and collaborating with a network of support groups right across Europe, North America and Canada to develop the Scooby shelter and to home Scooby's rescued cats and dogs. Lucinda Reid is director of Scooby, and although based in UK, Lucinda became attached to the shelter when she was accidentally adopted by Santa. Wow, my goodness. We really want to hear all about this. And the more Lucinda learned about the plight of Spanish sight hounds and hunting dogs, the more she became involved in actively building and developing the shelter with the small Scooby team. So welcome. Welcome to APDAWG.
Thank you very much.
Here we are.
Hello, I think Lucinda was going to start with the presentation.
I will. Can you see it?
Yes, we see it. Is this the Scooby shelter?
Okay, let's just do that. So I'm aware of the time constraint and we'll try and zip through, but we just wanted to give you a little bit of context. So Scooby started in Medina del Campo in Spain in the early 90s, and it was a small team of local women who were rescuing stray dogs and cats in a ruined building that the local authority granted them for stray animals. And over time, the galgos, so the Spanish hunting dogs, have come into the shelter there. And Fermin became involved towards the mid-90s, I guess, and he managed to get enough funding to build a purpose-built shelter on a piece of land which, thanks to our dedicated efforts, has running water, electricity and an on-site clinic. And now the shelter, almost 25 years later, focuses on stray collection, surrendered animals and rescuing deeper from the regions in Spain. We also have some horses and donkeys and ex-factory farmed animals. And approximately on average, the shelter rescues 1,200 dogs and normally homes that many. However, not all in Spain. It's predominantly mainland Europe and North America and Canada. And we only started in the UK last year, and I'll talk about that in a little while. So Fermin, over to you for this bit.
Well, you can see some pictures of our center. I would focus on the one that is in the middle on top. This is our hospital. Our hospital is well equipped and we are capable to run 5 or 6 operations at the same time. We normally do around 1,500 space and neuters every year. We also have our quarantine kennels where the dogs, when the dogs arrive, they are kept there until they get all the vaccinations. We check their health, and they are fully vaccinated. Can you please do the next slide, please?
I can, but it's not moving on. Hold on. Something's. Do you want to just keep talking for me, and I'll try and move it on?
Yes, well, we will try. Down there we have our new, the latest thing built. Okay, now we are talking about transport. Well, I am really experienced on transport because I used to do many of them. My first experience was driving from Medina Campo to Barcelona with rescuing ex-racing Irish greyhounds, coming and going. Now we used to go to Andalusia and Murcia in the south of Spain to rescue dogs. Normally, we transport our own dogs to mainland Europe according to the BALAI directive, and USA and Canada is done by plane, obviously.
So how did we start homing into the UK last year? This isn't due to the puppy pandemic or to the COVID situation. We think it was more due to Facebook algorithms, which drove a lot of interest to the Scooby Facebook page. And I had the 3 inquiries for these 3 dogs, and must say I was pretty nervous in placing them because I think I'm the last person you want on your adoption team, because nobody is really ever good enough from my point of view. But still, we saw that we could give these 3 dogs a better chance. And I thoroughly interviewed the families who put themselves forward, did a rigorous home check and reference checking on them. And just as I was closing out those 3 adoptions, which we thought would be our only 3 coming to the UK, a qualified canine psychologist contacted us and said that she specialised in homing foreign dogs and she wanted to help if we could use her help. So we interviewed her and took references on her and thought, well, she might be able to help us with a pilot scheme of, say, 4 or 5 at a time. And we started in July last year, and in between the lockdown regulations, we've managed to home 54 dogs into the UK. And we've used mainly commercial DEFRA registered transporters and complied with all of the DEFRA steps under the BALAI directive. And right through to Brexit, we haven't done anything this side of Christmas because, of course, we're not undertaking any non-essential journeys, but we're getting to grips with the new regulations post-Brexit. So particularly the health certificate, which is proving more difficult on the Spanish side. DEFRA been very, very helpful in explaining to us what the steps are, but the Spanish local authority vet is having some difficulties in coming to terms with that. And of course, if we want to use our own vehicle, and these photographs are of the Spanish vehicle, we need to have a transporter authorization. We are starting the application process. So we have submitted our application and the contingency plan that would go with that. What we've noticed is DEFRA doesn't yet require competency statements, and the Spanish authorities have required that of Fermin and his drivers. Overlaid onto the DEFRA regulations, we've developed our own policy, which we've written up and process mapped for everyone on the Scooby team. We've been absolutely explicit that if we are homing into the UK, it must not create work for UK shelters. We will not import puppies, and generally we say no to galgos because we can home those in mainland Europe and Canada and America, and we don't want to crowd out greyhound homes in the UK. But our policy in a nutshell involves a searching interview and a home check with a potential home. And the canine psychologist I described to you liaises closely with the Scooby team to grasp a behavioural understanding of the dog through videos of the dog in different scenarios, which we also show to the adopters. And Scooby is lucky to have a small premises with a bungalow on site, which is run by a Dutch lady who's part of the Scooby team. And although the dogs are pretty much still in a kennel environment, she observes them at close quarters and can take them into her bungalow if she needs to. We make sure that all of the adopters have an adoption contract. We issue an adopter's guide and a list of do's and don'ts. The dog psychologist offers follow-up in the ensuing weeks. And if we need to have rescue backup, we have 2 spaces in a boarding kennel, which is experienced in foreign dogs, and our canine psychologist works between the adopter and the boarding kennel. We also have 2 or 3 foster homes, and we've negotiated with our Spanish insurer that the insurance applies for up to 5 foster homes in the UK from the point of view of third-party insurance and any damages to the home. But we have to have the fosterers understandably identified, they have to have a foster contract, and we have to maintain contact with them. I'll leave Fermín to describe the medical side, so blood tests and the like.
Okay, all our dogs are sent always castrated. We never send puppies that cannot be castrated. They are all blood tested. We normally in the north of Europe, the people is very afraid of tropical diseases. So we are in contact with 2 professors, one from the University from Madrid, the Professor Guadalupe Miró, and one from Zaragoza, the Professor Pablo Gómez Ochoa. And both of them, they always assess us when we have any problem. Normally, I must say that if there are, in this area, there are not a big problem with leishmania or diseases like this. And if there is one, I used to keep myself. So I have around 5 or 6 galgos that they are leishmania positive, and they are living with me perfectly okay. All the dogs, they are free, and they got their flea and tick treatment. They are health check. So we only try to send dogs that they are as healthy as possible. Obviously, sometimes something happens, but then we cover all the costs. Lucinda, can you put the next slide, please?
Just a few words on lessons learned. So even though we have a short experience in the UK, we've a long experience with the rest of Europe and Canada and the US. And in my experience, it's managing the adopters more than managing the animals and the process. So we understand obviously that the legislation in the UK about dangerous dogs is open to discussion. And there are many adopters who are contacting us now because they see that there are more bull breeds coming into the Spanish shelter at Scooby, and ask us to circumnavigate the legislation here. But we understand that it's not illegal to import those dogs, but we will not do it because we feel it's going against the spirit of the law. And we've had adopters say to us, can you have your vet change the passport? You know, really, it's just a mixed breed. It's not really a dangerous dog. And one lady very kindly said to me, no, I can be bloody difficult. And if you don't get it sorted. And I think it's an overwhelming desire to fulfill a sense of purpose in terms of welfare rather than to break the law, but they are emotions that need managing. We've had a couple of families who have inflated their dog experience, and we probably were a little bit misled and have learned that we need to be, even more rigorous in our testing and not take everything in the way that it's always presented to us. And we haven't been afraid to reject a family partway through the adoption. So if they've started to show signs of being difficult, or just your gut instinct tells you that they're not going to be a good home for the dogs, we've rejected them and stopped the adoption. The other problem I have from a UK point of view is we have quite a service orientation in our culture, and I think the UK adopters don't always understand what a shelter like Scooby is up against in terms of coalface rescue. So in the photograph you see a recent rescue where the chap in the picture is saving, I think it was 3 or 4 galgos from storm drain. And that kind of thing is not unusual. They're also rescuing dogs from those dry wells in the Spanish countryside. And it's tough on a small team. We're not dealing with RSPCA level facilities. It's a very basic animal welfare provision. And so I often find myself managing expectations. And because they see that you're dedicated, then they expect a bespoke service, and we often have to remind them that we're not Harrods. A valid question we often get, which I'll hand over to Fermín, is why isn't Spain solving its own problems?
All right, just a minute or so left then, okay? Because we're sort of going over time.
Fermín, do you just want to answer? This is our last slide, actually.
Yes. Okay. I will try to do it really fast. We try to solve our own problems. In fact, the problems in Spain, they are solving really quickly. This is why a Scooby shelter that is based in the northwest of Spain is able to rescue dogs from the south. But I can show you, for example, this picture. This is when we find a dog that has a chip and is abandoned. We make the report, and we have gotten several exits. We got several penalties for the ones that they are abandoning the dogs, and we whenever there is a mistreatment or there is an abandon, we go to the law, and we have won several court cases. In fact, we work with 2 or 3 animal lawyers that defend our cases, and we have been quite successful.
And just our last final slide, some of the 54.
Oh, lovely. Well, thank you so much, and thank you. That's really stimulated a lot of conversation already in the chat, and I can see that lots of people are already asking questions in the Q&A as well. So if people can try to please stay to their 5 minutes, we'll have much more time for Q&A, and then you'll be able to speak more at that point as well. So we have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 speakers. So 5 minutes each will take us to 1:45. So the next person is Sabrina Lotz, co-founder and trustee of Serbia's Forgotten Paws, founded in 2012 and volunteer-run charity. Main focus has been fundraising and event coordination, documentation for rehoming and transport. Sabrina has also adopted 3 dogs herself and fostered dozens more. Welcome to Sabrina.
Thank you very much. I'll try and be as efficient as I can with my 5 minutes. So just a brief introduction to Serbia's Forgotten Paws and who we are. If you do want to find out more about us, this is our website and also our Facebook page, so please feel free. Next slide, please. To give you a brief introduction to who we are, we were a charity founded, this is our 9th year now, by a very small group. We have since expanded, but we have remained as an entirely volunteer-run charity. We've been a UK registered charity since 2014. And I'd say our main core team is about 8 people with 5 trustees. Our focus of the charity is ultimately improving the lives of animals in need, both in shelters that we support, but also working with pounds over there and also strays. I will today mostly focus on dogs, but we do also have cats. We've opened up the first horse and donkey sanctuary in Serbia and also have some pigs. Next slide, please. So a bit of a snapshot about what we do in terms focusing more on work with the dogs. So we have hundreds of dogs in our care in our shelters in Serbia. When we first started working over there, the conditions were poor to say the least. So this was definitely one of the key things we wanted to improve, making sure that these dogs that are living outside, and in Serbia, temperatures get down to, minus 15, 20, there's snow, mud, you name it. So we're very fortunate to have volunteers that spend their holidays coming over to Serbia and helping us. Our dogs all have insulated houses. They all have wooden flooring in their kennels, so they're not sitting in mud anymore. We now have 3 exercise areas so that all the dogs can get out and get exercised regularly. So this has made a great improvement to our shelters. We have also been working with local pounds, trying to improve the condition of the pounds. We run a catch, neuter, release scheme and have certain other local initiatives. Like one of the things in the photo on the right it's a vending machine where you can recycle plastic bottles, and it then turns that into dog food for street dogs. So we've just invested in some of those. And we also try to work with local communities, like running open days at the pounds, and trying to sort of educate people over there as well to the stray dogs and also dogs that are abandoned in these pounds and shelters. And of course, fundraising is what we all, I think, spend plenty of time doing. Next slide, please. In terms of rehoming, so Serious Forgotten Paws have rehomed over 800 dogs since we started. Predominantly, these were rehomed in the UK. One dog on the right was the first dog we rehomed. He's quite special to me because he was rehomed with my mum in Germany. We assess all of our dogs, be it either straight from shelters or something that we've been able to do more recently with increased fundraising, also, and as our support has grown through the years, is fostering putting these dogs into foster homes first. So we have the chance for the dogs to acclimatise to being in a foster home in Serbia. They can be properly assessed if we personally cannot travel out there to meet the dogs, as we've had this year. So we've had to rely very heavily on our fosterers in Serbia for that. And then we match them to their new owners. All new homes are home checked. We have a standard adoption contract in place. When the dogs are rehomed, we offer a trial period. So we start with an initial trial period. I think this is the fairest both on the dogs and the adoptees. And of course, we have the rescue backups in place. I think the importance of that was already emphasised in a talk earlier today. One of the things we've also been doing, I think for about 4 or 5 years now, is a dual registration of our microchips. We found this really useful. It just means the primary keepers, the owners on there, but we as a charity remain on there as well, purely as a just in case you move house or change your number, that there's always a contact on there for those dogs. In terms of the process that the dogs go through, is we have several processes we already had to follow pre-Brexit. We have also now had 2 transports post-Brexit. It has certainly been a learning curve. One of the key things is that all dogs leave Serbia from a registered shelter. So we have a registered shelter in Serbia. They are also transported by our DEFRA approved transporters. They're all issued with a veterinary health certificate from the Serbian ministry, and all of the travel is registered via the Traces system all the way till their arrival to the UK. Next slide, please. And that was more or less what we do, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. And yeah, it's very interesting to hear about what's happening in Serbia as well. And there's already some chat down the side about, you know, transportation and helping countries themselves as well. So I'm sure that we'll come on to much of that in our question and answer session. So thank you, Sabrina. Our next speaker is Mihaila Tanta, founder of Serious Animal Rescue, formed in 2017, graduated in law, but instead chose to dedicate her life to animal rescue. Is a vet technician helping to rescue, rehabilitate and rehome animals. Welcome.
Thank you. Tracy prepared some slides for us also. Thank you, Tracy. I'm so bad at all of the technology. So yes, we are a rescue that was founded in 2017. We started 3 people, and now we are maybe 15 people that volunteer in our rescue. Let me just, can you please give the other slide, because I will move quite fast on them. Yeah, so here we have a part of our team, the team that is in Romania. All of us are volunteers, none of us are paid to do anything. You have here in these photos, you have my mom, my aunt, Anna. So we are quite a family. We started this journey. We didn't think that we will do so many things and still feel that we didn't do enough. So true. Yeah, can you please give the other one? We have a UK team also that handles a lot of the cat and dog adoptions. It's easier, we don't have language barriers, so the girls in our team are doing an amazing job at communicating with the adopters. We have around 800 adoptions in Romania and UK up until now, and we had with all of them, we have rescue backup with the charities and the rehoming centers in UK that help us have the rescue backup that is needed at the second, at that moment, just to take the dog, keep the dog safe until we have a next transport or someone that could pick the dog and bring it back to Romania. We have 5 dogs that returned back, so that's really good. Chances are that we will do even greater now that we have a behaviorist involved. He's really, really awesome, and we have a page, Serious Animal Rescue Live, where we have the behaviorist and we have the adopters that can talk with him. So we are involved in that also, just having a relationship with every adopter and trying to help them understand the dog, us understanding the dog, and the dog understanding us, because it's really something to have a dog that lives on the street, to live in a home environment. They really need to know what they are doing, either the adopter and the dog. So yes, we had a lot of dogs that went to adoptions, but we had few that came back, and I think that that is because we don't have a shelter. We have 2 homes that we bought before we had the rescue. We thought, okay, we're not, how should I say it to be politically correct, not where the others failed, but at somehow, yes, what do we need to do in order to have good adoptions? Here, if you want, in Romania, if you want to have a shelter, you have by law, you have to have only pens. You cannot let the dog interact with them, with other dogs. You have to keep them separate in a pen. They cannot have interactions with people. You can adopt a dog from the pen, but only after you sign the papers that you have adopted the dog. Only then you can go and interact with that dog. So the law here is really messed up, and it's not good for dogs, because they are social and they need interaction with people. So then we thought we will not build a shelter, we will not have that environment for the dogs. Instead, we will have, we call them pit stops, places where we take the dogs from the street. We try to give them as close as possible as a home environment. They can stay inside, they can stay with us, they can, I don't know, here a washing machine, here a vacuum cleaner or something like that, that gives problems before, after adopted. So yeah, we try to do it like this, and thankfully it worked, because dogs are really well socialized. We have Volunteers Day where people come, and also, can you please give the other slide? I think that we have photos from the Volunteers Day. Yeah, here they are. We have kids coming up, and because this is another problem that we encountered over time, that dogs get adopted and maybe they are a little reluctant towards kids. So we try to invite people with kids to our pit stops to socialize with our doggies. Is really, really good for the kids also, because here there is a kind of a mentality that dogs, if you see dogs on the street, they could bite, or don't put your hand on that dog. So having them at the Volunteer Day and making them enter a space with 40, 30, 40 doggies. Yeah, we have them kind of separate in sections, like the small ones, not quite so much with the large ones on the Volunteer Days. just because we don't want to have accidents. So we are really careful when we have the Volunteers Day, but it's really important that kids come and they can see from an early age that they can touch a dog, that not all dogs are aggressive, and if you treat them with respect, they will treat you with respect and love. So yeah, we have the Volunteers Day, which are amazing. We also have a spay and neuter program that is in one of the villages. It's a big problem that people think that, yeah, Romanian people are monsters and they are killing puppies and they are not doing so much spay and neuter as we wished. But at the same time, we had a lot of cases that we have older ladies that live by themselves with, I don't know, maybe converted 200 pounds worth of salary or income every month, and one spay is maybe 40, 50, 60, 70 at times in the vet clinics, pounds in the vet clinics in Cluj. So they don't have a car, they cannot bring their dog to be spayed in the city because in the villages there are not vet clinics, and that spay could mean half their income for a whole month. So yeah, they resort to all sorts of bad behaviors of disposing of the puppies just because they cannot do anything with liters and liters and liters, because you can keep a litter, you can keep two, but at one point you will not be able to cope and you will not be able to feed them. So yeah, that's why we need to have these spay and neuter programs in the villages to help people that have no resources, no transport, even they are not even educated enough to know that they could do a procedure where they can spay the dog and they will not have puppies anymore. Even that you have to explain to some people, and you have to be really careful in choosing the words so they can understand you and they can agree to give you the dog for spay or neuter. So we had a lot of dogs spayed in the villages. Could you do the next slide, please?
If you can just finish up in the next 30 seconds, thank you.
Yay, okay. Yeah, we have here Paddy. Paddy was hit by a car and he is now living the dream in UK. We received help from Miracles Mission, who we all love. They are really good with disabled dogs. So we had these dogs that usually they were about to be put to sleep, or usually they are put to sleep everywhere in Europe because no one knows how to handle a disabled dog. So Miracles Mission are really great in teaching people how to help these doggies and rehome them, and he's having the best life ever. We are building now a vet clinic in one of the near the city, where we will be able to do even more space and reduce the numbers, because this is one of the problems that we have, and that's why we have a lot of dogs rehomed, just because we have to limit the number and the accessibility to all of the dogs that you can encounter here in Romania. We have to lower the numbers of dogs here so we don't have so many dogs rehomed in other countries. We don't put so much pressure in everyone, in us, in UK. So that is something that we have to do. We also have the project for a sanctuary where we will be able to keep the doggies that are not rehomable for some reasons. Could you give like the others, like just fast, so people can see them? Yeah, this is the vet clinic that I was saying that we are building now. It's really a top shelf, like really awesome built clinic. Next one, please.
Okay, if you can just finish up now.
Okay, so
Wow.
if you want to know more about what we do, enter Serious Animal Rescue and you will have there all of the info, and also you will receive more info on what we do with city halls and changing the law and in placing spay and neuter. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mihaila, and we'll have lots of questions for you, so we'll learn more, but it's been amazing to hear about particularly the education for young children as well. And if I can move on to Wendy Higgins, who is Director of International Media at Animal Protection Campaigners Humane Society International. She helps amplify their work on a range of issues such as the fur trade, whaling and rescue dogs, in particular from South Korea's dog meat trade. So over to you, Wendy.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen.
Oh, I have done for you if you want. Do you want to share your own?
Oh, no, that's perfect.
There you go.
Can everyone see my slides?
Yep, yep, we can see them.
Perfect, okay. So Humane Society International is involved in dog rescue in a number of countries, but I thought it might be quite useful to focus just on our dog rescue work in South Korea, where we rescue dogs from dog meat farms as part of the dog meat trade. Next slide, please. So before I talk about how we rescue, and there's been lots of really great best practice, I'll whistle stop through our HSI's work because I don't want to repeat a lot of the good best practice that we've already heard. It's important to look at why we rescue. So we don't rescue purely to save the lives of the dogs from the dog meat trade, although obviously that is a wonderful bonus. The broader reason why we rescue dogs from the dog meat trade is to help achieve our ultimate goal, which is to end the dog meat trade and stop the need for rescue in the first place. And that's because when we rescue and then adopt out our dogs, we are helping to raise awareness outside of South Korea, but also to help rebrand dogs inside South Korea, because they have a very bad reputation, often perpetuated by the dog meat trade. And so our happy ending stories of good adoptions showing that these dogs can make wonderful family pets and best friends really helps to move the dial in South Korea. And our farm closures help to demonstrate to the government that it's a blueprint for change and that actually dog meat farmers can be part of the solution in ending the dog meat trade. Next slide, please. So before we even take on a rescue with a dog meat farm, we do an internal audit to make sure that we've got everything in place to actually take on the responsibility of a dog farm closure. So that would be, have we got enough staff on the ground in South Korea at that time? Do they have the required skills for the type of dogs that we're going to be seeing on a particular farm? Have we got the capacity to have the flights in place? All of the dogs, pretty much most of the dogs that we rescue on dog meat farms are not going to find homes in South Korea because dog adoption is just not widely accepted yet in South Korea. It's something we're trying to change. So they will be flown overseas to get homes. Have we got a vet in place in South Korea who can do all of the vaccinations and the blood works and the health checks? All of these things will be taken into consideration before we commit to a rescue, so that we don't find ourselves mid-rescue and then not actually have capacity to have good outcomes for those dogs. Slide, please. Once we secure a farm closure agreement with the dog meat farmer, we then set about visiting the farm so that we can do behaviour assessments on every single dog on that farm. And the person in the slide that you see here is my South Korean colleague, Nara. Nara will make multiple visits with the farmer to the farm over a number of months. And every single dog is assigned a behaviour code, so that she knows where on the farm we have dogs that have who are particularly stressed, which dogs have food aggression issues, which dogs are shy, which dogs are very easily handled. And so those behaviour assessments that she makes on the farm are absolutely critical. Everybody who's involved further down the chain, so they know exactly, we know that the dogs are going to the right shelter partners who can handle those behaviour challenges, and they know from Nara what the kind of behaviour signals they need to look out for. Next slide, please. We then go about making sure that we've got a shelter partner plan in place for every single dog, and we start constructing that plan as soon as we have a closure agreement with the farmer. So whether they're headed to the UK or the United States or Canada, and whatever their behavioural challenges might be, we've got an appropriate shelter destination for each of those dogs. Next slide, please. Awesome, thank you. So the next critical stage is between agreeing the closure and actually the rescue day, is a whole series of vaccinations and a quarantine period. So we work with a local vet who does all of that hand in hand with us over multiple visits. And as I said, because these dogs are flying overseas, they have to have a quarantine of at least 30 days. We quarantine pretty much all of our dogs on the farm. And the reason that we do that is most of these dogs are incredibly stressed, very shy, nervous dogs. Most of them will never have been handled at all by a human. And so reducing the number of moves that they make from farm to adoption means that we reduce their stress. So once the dogs are handed over to us and the paperwork is signed by the farmer, we immediately change their care pattern. They're given daily fresh water, they're transitioned onto nutritious food, they're given bedding, proper shelter, but they stay on the farm for that quarantine period. The exception to that will be any at-risk dogs. They will be immediately taken off the farm, and we have a shelter partner in South Korea with a limited capacity who can help us care immediately for any dogs that have life-threatening conditions or injuries that need to be dealt with. Every dog is vaccinated against rabies, canine coronavirus, canine influenza, distemper, infectious hepatitis, parainfluenza, and parvo. And then after the quarantine, they're given another health check prior to transport. And then on arrival at their destination country, every dog will be tested for heartworm and tick-borne diseases and given appropriate treatment as needed. Next slide, please. Some of the dogs, a small number of the dogs, do come to the United Kingdom. There's Mark on, I think, our 15th dog farm closure with one of the dogs who came to the UK. Their quarantine is a number of weeks longer, and so they come off the farm at the same time as all the other dogs, but they go to our partner shelter in South Korea where they finish up their quarantine, and those dogs will all be tested immediately for heartworm because obviously they're in country a bit longer until they're ready for their flight. Slide, please. The dogs arriving in the USA or Canada, we have two shelter plans. They either will go to HSI-run temporary shelters that we have in Washington, DC and in Montreal in Canada, or they will go to a shelter partner. If they're at our shelter, every dog is given a colour code for behaviour, which they will be passed over from NARA, who first assessed them. As much as we can, we try to replicate the cage position of the dogs so that we reduce their stress. So if they were used to every single day of their life on the farm seeing a certain number of dogs in the opposite cages, those are the same dogs that they will see in the shelter, so that they have a certain element of familiarity, which helps the healing process. And then they will go about a dedicated pattern of work with trained professional behaviorists who will work with each individual dog according to their need on things like food aggression, learning to play. These dogs have never learnt to play. Some of them will need to be trained how to lie down in a bed because they don't know what that is. And we use lots of food inducements and ways to get them to build that trust. If they're not at an HSI shelter but at a partner shelter, then we try very hard to make sure those same standards and processes are also implemented. The adopters are all made aware of the specific challenges of adopting a dog meat trade dog, particularly because most of those dogs have been born on that farm and don't know what it's like to live in a house. We also talk to them about strategies that have worked that are successful ways to integrate a dog meat trade rescue into their lives. Next slide, please. The process for a UK shelter is pretty much the same. This is Winston, who was rescued from our 15th dog farm closure and is now in the UK. The UK shelter is made aware of the personalities and behaviour needs of all of the dogs before they even leave South Korea so that they can make preparations. The shelter partner that we work with, do I need to speed up?
A minute, Wendy, yeah, just
okay.
Lots of questions, honestly.
Sure.
There's loads coming down the chat already.
Sure. Our shelter puts the dogs into foster homes, and that means that they can be assessed in a family and make decisions about whether those dogs can be in a family with cats or children or other dogs, or whether they need to be on their own. And HSI stays in contact with those adopters. Next slide, please, final slide. Throughout the adoption, we have a dedicated Facebook group which has about 700 members. And that's a really popular platform where they share success stories, any challenges. And again, HSI stays in contact with those adopters so that any new behavioural issues that pop up, we can make sure that our behaviourist is in contact with those adopters so that they can resolve those problems quickly. I'll finish up there. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Wendy. And our heart absolutely goes out to all of that work, particularly in South Korea's dog meat trade. Absolutely. Anything that we can be doing in Parliament, if people can be putting down in the questions as well to reach out through the Foreign Office as well to the different countries. And moving on quickly to our last three speakers. So we do have 5 minutes each, and then we want to have plenty of time for you to interact with questions. The next person is Julia Baber, who is a co-director of Animalcouriers, who operates air and ground travel of cats and dogs. Thank you, Julia.
Hi. Is it working? Gosh, there have been some amazing presentations so far, and I'm really, really anxious to not go back over anything anybody's already said, because it's been fantastic to listen to. So I'm going to focus, I'm going to kind of cut to the chase, I guess, and focus on what we in our job, which is actually a DEFRA type 2 haulier, moving animals from A to B, experience and what we feel is probably good practice. This picture here is a little dog that we collected earlier this year from Limnos, sponsored by Starlight Barking, and this is actually what we're all about. And the people who do our job, this is what we're about. Can I have another slide? Ah, what do I do? Do I press that? Oh, look. Oh, look. There you go, little Radu. So I'm not going to go back over best practice, because when I created this slide, I wasn't aware of what fantastic presentations were going to come before me. But just to say that it's very important for people who do what we do to have a background understanding of each other. We need to be sharing a job. It has to be dog-centered. Very, very important is a dog return plan in place. And I think that anyone who does what we do, which is moving rescues and other dogs and cats from A to B, that there has to be a situation where we can offer to, in the worst possible case scenario, take a dog back to where it came from. We've, in 15 years, only done this twice. And it was very, very hard for us.
Not sure if it's just me, but I've got a bit of an echo here. I don't know if other people have.
What's going wrong? Yeah. What am I doing?
I think we're just going to have to bear with it.
Shall I sit further away?
Oh no.
Sitting further away?
Sorry, Julia. I'm so sorry. It's very, very echoey. I wonder if could we move on and then we'll come back to you to see if we can get this out for Julia?
You can. Shall I turn my computer off and turn it on again?
Well, perhaps we could do that. People are saying if you could
will you be able to find me?
Turn your volume down and everybody else to mute.
Will I be lost forever?
Absolutely not. We won't allow it.
Do you want to try turning your Julia? Do you want to try turning your volume down on your computer?
Okay. Shall I leave the meeting?
No. Just turn the volume down on your computer.
Oh, turn the volume down.
Yeah.
How about that?
Much better.
Oh, do you know
Go.
there are so many people out there who'd like to turn the volume down when I'm speaking. Brilliant. Okay, if you can you hear me?
Much better. Thank
I
you.
can't hear me, so that's all right. Okay, so not going back over all the things that have already been said, I just wanted to say that a dog return policy is an extremely important part of our role. If a shelter does need to have its dog back, anyone who does what we do needs to be in a position where they are happy to work with the shelter and take a dog back to where it's come from. And also dog health and behavior profiles, we all need to, that's people who do what we do, moving dogs from A to B, need to understand the importance of dog health and understand and work with behavioural profiles if the shelters can offer them to us. And where they do, we really genuinely take an absolute notice of it. So moving away then from the relationship with the shelter and the new owners, and please ask questions later if you want to, vehicles and the journey are really important. One thing that we feel very, very strongly about is that you pick up maybe 5, 6, 10, 15 dogs in a place and you move them from A to B. What's really important is that you've got to be aware that suddenly a dog is being taken from an environment where there was some privacy, where he could get away from other dogs, where he was able to, if he wasn't happy or she wasn't able to deal with something, move themselves away from difficult situations. Now, when you pop a dog into a vehicle and you travel for 4 days, maybe, a difficulty has got to be in our minds that if a dog doesn't get the privacy that it needs to be relaxed and less stressed, you could end up with a situation where for 4 days, a dog is in the most unbearable situation. And it doesn't matter how hard the shelter has tried. I'm not a behaviourist, but I am very aware that experiences that happen often don't leave dogs. And one of the things I think that's really important is for us is to see a dog that leaves our van wagging its tail in a happy state and not looking worried in any way. So we think it's really important for dogs when they're traveling to have no open spaces between each other. They should not be able to see through their cages into another kennel cage. You can have a situation where in a van, at the front end of the van, you could have a dog that's barking at another dog that's 5 or 6 cages down the line, and there's a kind of bullying going on. You've got to be very aware of this, doing what we're doing and making sure that dogs are comfortable. So going on to comfort, there's air conditioning, central heating, powered ventilation, all things that are an absolute must. Breaks and rests. One of the criticisms we have of particularly the puppy transporters is there's this kind of need to get from A to B in 2 days and cover what other more conscientious transporters would cover in 4 days. They will do it day and night and give no dog a break in between. Security is important. Can't have dogs escaping, can't have dogs getting away from you. All vehicles should have some sort of a double entry system so that if you're putting dogs into a van at a shelter, you need to be aware that if something happens and a dog can get away, it's just unbearable. It's a thought that you can't even think about. And then of course you need journey backup and support. You need, for instance, to have a good system that it does happen, vehicles break down, batteries go flat, things happen, and you have to absolutely have at your fingertips backup. If you need a vet on a journey, a company like ours should have places where they know that there are 24-hour vets, and it's an extremely important thing from A to B to have this situation where you're feeling confident that if a dog becomes unwell, you can have a discussion with your shelter, have a discussion with your owner and say, it's okay, we know a man who can, and go there. Accreditation, I'm going to come on to that in the next slide, but that's really important. And then of course, we need trained handlers. Oh, my slides disappeared. What's happened? Sorry, someone's trying to ring me. So can that go back again now? I've lost the slide. What's happened? Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. All right, don't worry. I'm going to talk to my bits of paper. Don't worry. I can hear you can hear me, can you? Nod if you can hear me.
Yeah,
good. All right, I'm going to keep going. Now, on the next slide, I have something I call areas of concern. Now, there is dog health, which we've already mentioned. There are the zoonotic diseases, and the charities that we work with, probably we work probably more with Starlight Barking than we do any other charity, go to a lot of trouble to make sure that there is an absence of leptospirosis, Ehrlichia, there's heartworm, of course, worms and rabies, of course, are all covered for, and of course, parvovirus, distemper, because, you know, in those 4 days, you can get from A to B, and by the time you get to the other end, you've got a sick van on your hands. So it's really important for dogs to have the best possible bill of health when you collect them, doing the job that we do. And we're very comforted when we hear that they've been tested for Ehrlichia, leptospirosis. We'll take them, but we need to know that there is this issue and that we can make sure that there is a situation where dog isn't going to be near other dogs and so on and so on. So that's an area of dog health. Neutering, I think, probably goes without saying. And of course, behavioural assessments. I've heard, I don't want to go back over it because there's been such fantastic words already said about it. So you don't want to hear that from me. But what you probably do want to hear from me is the concerns that people who do what we do have in terms of accreditation. We're very concerned at the ease with which DEFRA appoint their type 2 hauliers. It's amazing because the DEFRA type 2 for the UK seems like the holy grail. It's what gets all these dogs into England, and it seems to be like the most important thing. And yet, DEFRA, who are our government's representatives, dish them out like confetti. Anybody can get a type 2 haulier's license. If I want to go and if I want to go to Spain and I would like a haulier's license so I'm licensed to work within Spain, my goodness me, the hurdles I have to go through. Not only do I have to have a business that's working and profitable, and I pay EVA, but I also have to do their own tests, their own competency certificates in their language. But in England, it seems to me like it's the easiest thing in the world to get a DEFRA type 2 haulier's license. And lots of us who do this job with lots of conscience and care, we really, really feel very anxious about this. Because Brexit, we thought this would be amazing. Brexit's here. Well, isn't this good? Suddenly, anyone who hasn't got a DEFRA type 2 haulier's license can't travel to England. And whilst there are some extraordinarily good hauliers out there who probably would qualify, we are witnessing, or within about 8 weeks, the unscrupulous hauliers. How can I put it? The ones that are bringing in puppies for the wholesaler trade. There's I'm sure I'm not telling anybody anything new here. There is a trade in the UK where people, men businesses act as wholesalers for puppies, and the puppies then go through the wholesaler. And then if you would like a puppy, you go to Gumtree or whatever the website is, and you say, I could do with I need a golden retriever. Oh, we'll get you a golden retriever. And hey presto, there's a golden retriever. I've had actual experience of this and have been there watching. When I thought I was at a breeder's house, in fact, I wasn't at a breeder's house, I was at a wholesaler's house. And the puppy that came out before me was a Labradoodle. And I waited, and after me, another breeder puppy left this house. So there is a big problem. And how are they all getting into the United Kingdom now after the 1st of January? Slays us, because there is obviously no accreditation checks made. There is definitely no way of monitoring, so there's no code of conduct, and there is no way that once these vans drive into the United Kingdom, that anybody stops them or even takes a mild interest in why vans with animals are in them are driving all over the UK. And yet we can go to Germany and be stopped and be asked to show what is in our van. And yet England, who have this very high standard, seem to be the one country that is almost like a rollover. So there are a great many of us in the business who are very anxious about this. When I first got talking to Mark, it was over what we'd seen in terms of the Romanian, and I hate this word Romanian because it's not Romanian, it's Hungarian, it's Bulgarian, it's Irish, it's, let me just think, it's Serbian, it's not Romanian, but sadly, Romania has become like the kind of the hyphenated name for illegal entries of puppies. It's not Romanian. It's a great many countries have got rescue. They call them rescue because they're not rescue. They are bred and then they are labelled rescue, and then everybody feels really good because they think they're buying a rescue or adopting a rescue puppy. This is a massive subject, so don't wind me up on it because I could go forever. So we need to move on, me talking to you now, and talk about the differences. As a company, we also air freight animals all over the world. We air freight them to New Zealand, Australia, the United States. We also move animals for people who are bona fide, they own them, they are not rescues, although all rescues around, but if you see my meaning. And if we were to have the kind of standards that we're witnessing coming through Calais and through Dover and Folkestone applied to air freight, you wouldn't have there would be no way you would get a dog or a cat onto a plane. The stringent rules that are applied for a dog that's going to make a 3-hour plane ride to somewhere like Stockholm, or a 1-hour plane ride to somewhere like Amsterdam, or an 8-hour journey to, say, New York, the carrier, so that let's just say it's BA for the sake of argument, the carrier has a checklist, and he stands there and he ticks off a whole load of
We're
points,
nearly
like,
at 9 o'clock now.
is the dog healthy,
you can be finishing
what's
up,
the stocking
please.
density like, and so on. And if those kinds of rules were applied to the animals that are coming into the United Kingdom or applied through Europe, a great many lorry loads of puppies wouldn't be heading our way in the way they seem to be. I'm
so sorry, we're going to have to move on to our next speaker now.
Is there feedback there?
Yes.
Hello.
Turn your volume up.
Hang on, I'm going to put my volume up.
We've gone way over, so we're going to have to move on.
Oh,
to
right.
The next
Well,
speaker,
I'm more than happy to stop.
There will be lots of questions. There will be lots of questions.
One sentence. We need a code of conduct.
Okay, thank you so much, Julia, and that was wonderful. Once we got you going there, you were just going on.
I've got no slides now, so.
And that that was grand. We got off to a bad start, but we got there in the end. So next we have our final two speakers. If we can please keep to 5 minutes, we can have all of the questions that people have been putting right down the chat for over an hour and a half now. I really want to bring people who have been kind enough to be listening for such a long time into the conversation too. So we have Kat the vet, who has a blog and runs social media, appears on TV radio. If Julia, if you can turn off your thing, it's echoing, and who has seen this from really the vet's point of view and wants to present to us some of the complications that can arise from adoption from abroad, and some of the disease risk and the vet's perspective. So thank you and welcome to our Kat the vet, not Mark the vet tonight, Kat the vet.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Is that what you can see? Jolly good. Thank you very much. Right, I will do my very best to go as quick as possible. So obviously, my name's Kat. I've graduated from Bristol University in 2003, and as well as being a vet in practice, seeing my patients and my clients, I also work online as a media vet in various roles. So I kind of feel this gives me a bit of a unique perspective sometimes on this issue, because I have lots of discussions with people online. I see the passion, the enthusiasm, the knowledge there is for rescuing these dogs, but I also see them with their new owners and with their families in my clinic and in their homes. So I kind of see it from both sides. I've been asked this evening to talk about some of the diseases that we encounter that these dogs inevitably and unfortunately do bring with them into our country. So this is going to be a real whistle-stop tour of all the different things that we see. So leishmania is probably one of the most common, maybe the biggest ones that we do see. This is a parasitic disease spread by sandflies. Now, those sandflies currently aren't in the UK, but with global warming, we can expect them to be coming here at some point or other. And the concern we have within the veterinary community is we are effectively seeding leishmania in this country. And as soon as we've got the sandflies, we're going to have a much bigger problem on our hands. These opinions that I'm giving you are mine, but they are also representative of the veterinary profession and community. There was a recent study done a couple of years ago that was an owner survey study that showed that nearly 15% of the rescue dogs coming into the UK are positive with leishmania. Now, leishmania, it's mainly spread by sandflies. There is dog-to-dog transmission has been recorded, and also dog-to-human transmission. That is very rare, but those cases have been reported. A lot of the dogs that come over aren't currently suffering with leishmania, but once they've got it, it's in their bloodstream forever, and the disease can manifest at any time. A lot of the charities, I find, slightly underplay the issue, in my opinion, and rescuers are often told that it's easily controlled and easily treated, and often quite cheaply treated as well, which in sometimes is true, but the medication can get expensive, so can the investigation and the sort of monitoring of the condition. So it is a problem, and we should be cognizant of it. Brucella canis is a new one. This is something that has been mentioned very, very recently. A new government report came out just in February about it, and it's because we're seeing more cases now, primarily from Romania, but I think probably that just reflects the fact that we see most of our dogs from Romania. And the problem with is a zoonotic conditioning that can be passed in bodily fluids. It's particularly to do with like reproduction, but it can be in most bodily fluids, and it is infectious to people. I have linked in, somebody asked a question, and I linked the document that I've talked about in the questions. You can read it if you like, but the government are becoming increasingly concerned about it. And I think it's probably going to be, if not a notifiable disease, then a reportable one. And that means that when vets diagnose it, they have to tell the government about it. Treatment can be challenging, and unfortunately a lot of the dogs who are infected with it do end up being euthanized because of the disease risk that they represent to other dogs and to humans. And I think that that's tragic. And one thing that I do see in my job, and I think we need to be very aware of with people who rescue these dogs, is the people who are rescuing these dogs are desperate to just rescue a dog, do the right thing, take a new family member on. And quite aside from the behavioral problems that Jordan talked about, and I'm sure Hannah's going to cover as well, there is a very emotional attachment. If they take on a sick dog, they take on a challenge that they're maybe not prepared for or wanted to. And I think we have to be aware of that as well, that there's that emotional problem. Echinococcus is a tapeworm. Now, obviously, with the travel schemes of dogs coming into the country, treating for tapeworms is a legal requirement, and all responsible rescues are doing it. But it's important to know about it because, again, it is zoonotic and can pass to people. And with the amount of dogs that we're seeing coming in, there are going to be treatment failures. There are going to be less responsible rescues that are possibly not treating or not doing it well enough. So it's something we need to be aware of. Heartworm. Now, this isn't something that's going to affect people or indeed spread between dogs. If a heartworm positive dog comes into the country, it's spread by mosquitoes, and the mosquito lifestyle in the UK means it can't become endemic. So heartworm isn't one that we're worried about setting up home in the country with the dogs coming in. But again, it can cause really serious disease in infected dogs. If we do not test them, we do not know that they have got it. And again, very distressing for new owners, very costly potentially. Some of these dogs need referral to really specialised cardiologists, and sometimes it's fatal. Again, that emotional turmoil, and it is something we need to be very aware of, and something I see in my job. Eyeworm, this one is grim. I didn't show any pictures of it because I thought, well, if you're not eating your tea, you probably just have. So this is exactly what it says. It's a worm that lives in the eye. It is zoonotic. It can pass to people, and it is spread by fruit flies, which we do have in the UK. They feed off the tears of an infected dog. If they get infected, then they can pass it on. It's not a common condition. We're not diagnosing it super often, but it is something that we need to be aware of. And then another Dilafilaria, which is a skin worm. Again, this is zoonotic, passed by mosquitoes like heartworm, but this one, the mosquitoes can survive in the UK. So we potentially do have a problem with this one. Most of the, not heartworm, I don't think, but the eyeworm and skin worm are treated by a lot of the worming treatments that these dogs are given. So again, you know, maybe they've got them when they're over there, and we do treat for them, or they see a vet who gives them not just the tapeworm treatment, but a more comprehensive worming treatment, and we are treating them. We just don't know they had it, and we have cleared it. There is also another one called a tongue worm, which is equally disgusting, and I didn't include it in this. And then we've got the tick-borne diseases. So they're absolutely classic. I think we all know about those. Once the Pets Travel Scheme dropped the requirement for tick treatments for dogs coming in from abroad, and you know, the tick diseases, that's, you know, dogs who go on holiday are at the same risk, really. So it was inevitable once that tick treatment was dropped, but responsible rescues really should be tick treating for them. And we now have tick-borne diseases that we didn't have in the UK prior to our pets travelling, that are now basically living here and are now at risk for our native population. So, you know, it's just an example of what is inevitable in if we drop our guard. And then rabies, I thought I should probably cover rabies really quickly, because obviously it is something which a lot of people think about now. We do have the vaccines, and obviously most reputable rescues are vaccinating. And quite frankly, the risk really is pretty low, because with the numbers of animals coming in, if we were going to see rabies breakthrough or failure of vaccination, I reckon we would have probably seen it by now, but it's something that we always need to be cognizant of. One thing about vaccinating, we used to, on the travel scheme, have to do a blood test to check that the vaccine had worked before dogs were allowed to travel in and out of the UK, and now that's no longer a requirement. And there have been some studies to show that rescue dogs do not respond as well to the vaccine as owned ones, which is kind of inevitable when you think about it, because they're probably stressed, they might not be very well, their immune systems might not be working so well. So the vaccines don't always work quite so well in them, but if we're not testing, we do not know. So in conclusion, for most of the diseases that I've talked about this evening, and they are just a whistle-stop tour, we don't know the true prevalence of how many are coming in. We have that stat about Leishmania, but that was an owner-reported survey. That wasn't actually testing the dogs, that what was owners were telling us a survey. So that might not be terribly accurate, but it's a reasonable idea. 15% is a lot. Because we don't know, because we're not testing for them. There's no requirement to test, either with dogs coming into the country or vets when they get here. And there's also no requirement to report. So if we find a disease, we treat for it, we deal with it. We're not actually telling any higher power so they can keep a check on what is happening. But I think it is fair to say that there are more dogs coming into the country, so they are going to be bringing in more disease. It's inevitable that we are going to see a rise in diseases because the dogs are coming in. That's not the dog's fault, but I think we need to be cognizant of that fact. So in conclusion, in my professional opinion, I think we need to be reducing the numbers of rescue dogs coming into the country. We're literally dealing with tens and tens of thousands now. And I just feel that with respect to those dogs, our native dog population, the humans in this country, I think the numbers are too big. And I think because we're bringing in so many, we're maybe not doing quite as good a job as we could do. And I think we need to bring the numbers down, but do a better job for the dogs that we do come in. I think we need to make testing for a lot of these diseases mandatory before they come in, so we can take those ones out that are going to represent a risk to our native dogs. We have to consider those in this debate as well, and human health, but then obviously deal with them in that country. We're not going to abandon them, but they might not be the best choice of dog to bring over. And also we need to have clear guidelines. So if rescues do start testing for diseases and then they find a positive dog, we need to have clear guidelines on what happens then, to make sure that we don't just throw those on a rubbish pile and bring in a healthy one. It's important, of course, to think about all of those dogs. And that is it. There you are.
Thank you so much.
I typed it.
That was wonderful.
There you are.
And certainly gave us a lot to think about as well in terms of the wider complications. Our final speaker is Hannah Molloy, who is the author of Dog Body Language book, What's My Dog Thinking? Wow. And has been featured on Channel 4's 2019 series Puppy School for her expert knowledge on puppy socialisation and training. So welcome, Hannah, and your final speaker of the night. So over to you.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's really great. Personally, I don't know about you, but I'm really already hugely encouraged by the work that's happening in the world already to prevent and educate. And I think it's been a fascinating evening. So thank you so much for having me speak. I'm going to time myself. Boom. Okay, 4 slides. That's all you're getting. Let's go. Let's talk just really briefly about the behaviourist perspective on Romanian and overseas rescues. That's what I've been asked to speak about. We could talk about this all day, but realistically, our job as behaviourists is to assess behaviour, isn't it? To work out what's going on and then to design some realistic behaviour modification programmes that our adoptees can implement that are going to work. Obviously, then what we also do is provide some technical and emotional support for our adoptees as they're going through this journey with the dogs. And I think really top, a lot of the time we forget is the behaviourists that often will work out a quality of life scale. That's my job. I've got to work out on a scale of 1 to 10, the quality of life of that dog and the quality of life of that human. And for me, if we're reaching a 4 or below, there's a really serious problem that needs addressing. And that might be the route that we would now say, maybe this dog isn't supposed to be here, maybe we could rehome them. And that would start to happen from that point onwards. So when it comes to rehabilitating a dog successfully, there's a huge bunch of factors. So these are just a couple. First of all, if we look at the human side, we really want to have humans that are experienced in rescue dogs and understand some of the issues that can come with having a rescue dog. We'd love it if they have, really decent expectations and that they're flexible with those expectations, because sometimes things can take longer than we would like. It's useful as well if they've obviously got resources. So they're going to need time and they're going to need money. And ideally an environment where the human can control some of the triggers or the things that dog might be a bit scared of. When it comes to the dog, obviously their early learning makes a huge difference. So we talk about this idea that dogs need a certain amount of neural plasticity. So that's the ability of the dog's brain to learn in new environments, to be neurally plastic, to have a sort of immunization to stress. And that is hugely dependent on the dog's learning and socialization history. And then lastly, most importantly, a huge factor for success is having a really good bond with your adopter. Can I have the next slide, please, Tiffany? Thank you so much. So in terms of the dog behaviour, what are we seeing? Now, I'm going to say and caveat here, I don't often get to see the success stories. You don't tend to go and see a behaviourist if everything is going really well. So I've got a slightly biased view and I tend to see more of the problem cases than I see of the successes. But this is just a quick sample from the last 20 Romanian and overseas rescue dogs that I've seen. When it comes to dealing with UK rescue dogs, we tend to anticipate there'll be around 2 to 4 issues, and they generally consist of hyperactivity that comes from a lack of input or training. We'll see a lot of dog reactivity, a bit of human reactivity as well, but it'll be selective. So it'll generally be around men, children, or specifically handling. And then we tend to see an awful lot of separation issues. So you might have things like destruction or vocalization or toilet training issues. In my experience, unfortunately, when it comes to overseas rescue dogs, there's around 4 to 10 issues on average with each dog. And these can range from all sorts of things, and I'm not going to read them all out. But I think the hardest ones for a lot of people to deal with are being actually the dog is frightened of the adopters. So it's really difficult to build that solid bond because the dog's really scared and takes a long time to habituate to those people. Also, they're hand shy often, so they don't take treats, and that can make training really difficult for a lot of our adoptees. So as you can see, there's a huge range of different kinds of dog behaviour here. And I find that there are just a lot more issues that come from dogs that come from overseas. As I say, only one behaviourist of thousands in the country. Can I have the next slide, please, Tiffany? When it comes to the humans, a lot of the feedback that I get from clients is troubling, and it's a tricky thing to listen to. Often I hear that they don't get the accurate information from rescues. Obviously, we've heard from some this evening that have got really great support strategies, and that's really encouraging for me. But a lot of rescues that my clients have been going to find that they can't return the dog. As people have said, there isn't that backup. They often say things like, I haven't had any support. It bit my child and I had to keep it in my house for 2 weeks. And I think the hardest thing for me as a behaviourist is what then starts to happen is humans can get into patterns. So they'll say, you know, I've failed the dog. I probably shouldn't be a dog owner. And that kills me because they might be brilliant dog owners. It's just they've had a really tricky case that they've started with. They might have been denied a rescue dog from UK rescue centres for probably, you know, decent reasons. You know, UK rescue centres do an awful lot of checks to make sure, and I've done my time, that everything goes well. So just to summate in my last slide, if you could move on for me, Tiffany, my suggestions for managing and building better conversations here are to definitely improve owner education. We want to manage those expectations and increase the rehabilitation techniques of our adopters. I think we definitely need to improve communication from one side of the pond to the other. Build those UK foster schemes. Some of my trainers, some of my adoptees have said they've had one rescue dog from a great rescue centre and another from a not so good one. And the good one had fosters in the UK. So they really got to know the dogs before they put them in context. I really think effective temperament testing is crucial, and we could definitely be investing some more resources in situ. So thank you so much for letting me speak today. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what some of you guys have got to say in the Q&A. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Hannah. That was wonderful. We're just at 9:15, so we have 45 minutes for questions. So if I can hand over to Tiffany and Mark for questions. This is why I'll never be the speaker in House of Commons, because all the debates would run over. So I'm so sorry, and thank you for your patience with me. Over to Mark and Tiffany for questions.
Thanks, Lisa, for chairing that. Yeah, lots of speakers, and that's the nature of this sector. Really, there's so many links in the chains. There's so many different countries. There's so many different cultures. So we really tried to represent as much as we possibly practically could. So thanks to all the speakers, and thanks, Lisa. Tiffany, if you want to pick some questions to start off with.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, we have tons of questions, so I'll just kind of go through them in order.
And if everyone could just keep their answers really tight, so we get, you know, so all the panelists can have a go at answering if appropriate, and we get through as many questions as possible so we can finish at 10. Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. Okay, so the first question is there a point in which you decide that a dog would need to be euthanized on welfare grounds? For example, they cannot be managed whether due to emotional difficulties, leading to physical problems, or where they just present to be too high a risk. I guess whoever wants to kind of start it and feed in.
Well, from a vet's perspective, I would say absolutely. Absolutely. I think euthanasia is often seen as this really, well, it is an endpoint, but something to be completely avoided at absolutely all costs. And I think, but what you have to be really aware of is that stress and anxiety are a huge welfare issue, and that dog is probably living a really miserable life. And we should maybe think of it in terms more of suffering than like pain and disease. And I think mental distress is suffering. And if we can't fix that, and if we can't send the dog back, and it can never live a happy, free life with, and the people it lives with can never trust it, or, you know, be completely confident that it is a safe animal. And that's the other point. If this is not a safe animal, you also have to consider human safety, and whether, you know, if we euthanize because the dog is a danger to people, that is tragic but sensible. So yes, unfortunately, I think euthanasia is a valid treatment option in some cases.
I'm going to jump in super quick and just say I do agree with Kat. I think when it comes to animals, we have a stewardship. We all do. We have to steward them. We have to care for them. And I think the hardest thing, if you love dogs, is that if you do the maths, really, we don't have many strays in the UK, but definitely in the UK, if there's a dog, you need a human to vouch for that dog long term. So I think the difficulty is with the numbers, and we need to really effectively evaluate a quality of life aspect when it comes to the behaviour and the medical history of some of these dogs.
I agree completely as well, and from the perspective of safety, It's very important to consider not just the people the dogs are living with, but the wider community that it finds itself in, you know, neighbours, neighbours' children, etc. There's always a risk of a dog jumping a fence. And it's really, really important that that's taken into consideration as well. It's nice to all agree on something.
Can I just come in as the, you know, as a charity side then? We have had dogs that have come over. I personally had one and I had her for 5 years and found out after doing everything I could with her behaviour wise that she just was not suitable to a home life. And yes, she was probably classified as a dangerous dog. Obviously, I was very bonded with her as her owner, and she was my first experience of a dog rescue. And that's when I first got involved with Canine Angels, the charity that I help now. I mean, I couldn't bear to have her put to sleep, but I knew that she wasn't the right dog. She's a Molloy shepherd, who are Romanian guardian. They're basically bred to protect sheep. And with my experience with her, I stopped then. I wouldn't help any or bring any Molloy shepherds to this country, realizing the type of breed that they are. They do need like really specialist homes. She's now in a sanctuary. Thankfully, I found a space for her, which I paid privately. So she's in a sanctuary in Dorset. I couldn't bear to have her put to sleep. So I think every case needs to be looked at, and I'd hate for suddenly a rule to be put in that every dog's got to be put to sleep because it's a dangerous dog.
Certainly from an individual perspective, it has to be looked at on a one-to-one kind of basis, I think. And I've worked with lots of Mastins from Southern Europe as well that are a similar type of guardian breed, and also require a certain level of socialization and habituation that they don't always get. And I've seen numerous dogs that have been brought over into a city that maybe took 3 weeks to catch, and now are living in the middle of a town, weigh 70 kilos and could do serious damage. So it's at that point that something has to be called.
Okay, let's move on to another question, and thanks for those excellent answers, Tiffany.
This one is for Jordan specifically. You mentioned epigenetics. How does this affect foreign dogs?
So, I mean, it's one of a number of different factors that affect foreign dogs, along with like environment and life learning lessons. But basically, epigenetics is the way in which a dog's body interprets genes based on its experiences. So it's the switching off and switching on of expressions of genes. And it's almost like a genetic sort of memory. So there was an experiment done with a grandpa rat. It wasn't very nice, poor old grandpa rat, but he was electrocuted every time he smelt lavender. And each time then he smelt lavender, he ran away. He then had children with a grandma rat that never met, his children never met the grandpa, so never had an opportunity to learn the behavior to be fearful of lavender. They were also fearful of lavender, and they tracked this change over 14 generations. So if this change has occurred over 14 generations, then surely dogs in street environments, that in particular in countries where they have to be afraid of men specifically, say, to survive, generation after generation, this becomes almost an epigenetic memory, a learned experience that's passed on through the expression of genes and changes in synapses. I don't know whether Hannah wants to come in on anything else on that.
I think that's just ace. It's true. Behavior can be passed on genetically. We forget. We don't really think about that. I often say to my chow owners, I'm like, well, this dog was bred to be eaten. And so they are a bit aloof. And they go, it's a show dog. It was a show dog. Its grandparents is a show dog. And I'm like, that's great. But actually, really long time ago, they would have been eaten. So they're going to be a little bit more nervy of people because genetics, you know, can pass on behavior. So yeah, great answer, Jordan.
Thank you very much to both of you. The next question, do we know how many or an idea of how many rescues are registered or otherwise? I don't know if any of the vets are familiar or other rescues know these sort of figures.
What do you mean? What are registered? What do you mean?
Oh, if do we know potentially a number of foreign rescues?
The dogs are registered?
No, the rescues themselves, registered rescues themselves.
I wouldn't know numbers, but
I don't know if you can quantify it, because we're like a UK registered charity. So unless you go through the charity commission and look at the names and if they have anything related, like we're Serbia's forgotten cause, but we're classed as a UK charity.
That's probably the case with several of them, I would imagine. Okay, fantastic. I'll move on to the next one. Are the dogs being imported through the Molloy directive or pet passports?
Rebecca?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yep. Are the dogs and cats, I suppose, being imported into the UK through the Molloy directive or pet passports?
Pet passports.
Yeah, I mean, all our animals that we've brought over, they all have to have a pet passport, and we test for all the known potential diseases. Kat did mention is canine brucellosis, is that the same disease as the one you were talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, because the worst, I mean, we haven't had any cases at all with that disease. I do know, because we're obviously on Facebook and we see a lot of other rescues, and I had some information last year that was sent to us about that disease, that a particular rescuer had had a case of that, and then she actually went on to have another case of that. And it meant that that one dog that had that, the litter of puppies that were brought over, all had to be tested, and quite a few of them had to be put to sleep because they tested positive. So we're in discussions now with, as a charity, just to make this clear now, we have rehomed a lot of dogs in the past. We don't now do that. We focus more on spay neuter in Romania, raising funds, trying to educate in Romania, so that we're helping rescuers. A Red Panda, a lovely lady that runs Red Panda, she's all about educating Romanian people, and she likes to do a lot of her adoptions in Romania to encourage Romanians to adopt the dogs there. So we still basically we've scaled our rehoming down in the UK, because basically, to be honest, we couldn't cope when dogs did bounce back, because we have them back to our own homes. We're only a small charity. But yes, we test for all the known diseases, and with the heartworms, we also follow that up with a microscope check, as well as the test under the SNAP test. So we try and do everything to eradicate any diseases coming into the country. But yeah, every pet has to travel on a pet passport scheme, if that was the original question. Sorry, I do waffle a bit. Sorry.
I think that the point is that the Molloy scheme is actually the one that is really legally required, as far as I'm aware, to import dogs, because they're not coming as pets. The pet travel scheme was for pets, whereas the Molloy is the more correct way to bring them in as rescues, or sort of technically trade, obviously, but not. The study that I referenced in my talk, which showed that just under 15% of dogs were positive for Leishmania, was done by a team, I think, at Nottingham University. It was an owner survey, so there may be a lack of awareness amongst owners about what actually happened, but they came up with a figure of just under 2% of rescued dogs were imported under Molloy, which really is very concerning, because that means a lot of charities are bringing them in not technically correctly. It's probably higher than that, because I think a lot of owners just don't appreciate they've got a passport, well, then it's a passport scheme. But I think that's what the question was driving at.
Can I just say, we operated with the few we did last year under the Molloy directive, and I think, well, we've yet to do one post-Brexit, but I think what's happened is DEFRA has incorporated the Molloy directive with a couple of, with the health certificate being drawn up in the way they've drawn it as a model for the EU nations to use in a bilingual format. But that's all I've managed to glean from reading and discussions. We've yet to see it in practice.
The AHC scheme, what's replacing it is fabulously complicated, but I'm not too sure. That's for dogs leaving the UK. I'm not too sure how it's changed for dogs entering.
Good. I'll move on to the next one. Okay, this question says, I'm wondering if those rescues who are featured here engage regularly with registered trainers and behaviorists. I know several of you have said yes. If anybody wants to add any further comments about their work with behaviorists and trainers.
Well, Canine Angels have used behaviorists many times if needed. We always have the behaviorist on hand that the adopters can contact if they need to. But we tend to find out, more about the dogs before they travel. So we don't have too many dogs that have needed a behaviorist actually, but when they have, we have somebody on hand at all times for this.
Tiffany, just a follow-up question from one of the earlier panelists asking about resources and training for individuals and groups who are giving their time and perhaps need access to this expert support. Is there anything more that could be done from a policy perspective or anything to make those resources more accessible? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? Or is people able to access those resources, and individuals as well being able to access behavioural support? I know it's not always inexpensive.
I know the one thing I would say is that there's a huge amount of people who, first of all, work in rescue here and also are watching that can feed back about this. And it would be really interesting data. I can't help it, I'm a behaviourist, so I love, give me some data, and there's so much of it out there. I think there's so many people's opinions, and it would be really great to hear, if you have had a Romanian or an overseas rescue, have you booked a behaviourist? Is that something that you've needed to do? And if so, what kinds of problems were you finding that you had? I think if we collected that kind of information, it would give us a really good picture of what is going on. But I would say it's imperative that if you're going to bring dogs over, if you're going to run a rescue, you should absolutely have a behaviourist, not as a sort of sideline if we need it, but definitely have a behaviourist that you can call upon that can give advice and support to your adoptees, because they do need it.
And please make sure they do it in a fashion that's non-aversive and reinforcing, because street dogs have come from an environment where they have a lot of freedom, and they've suddenly taken all this freedom away, and so much of their natural behaviour has already been suppressed. So please don't suppress any more of it. Offer them outlets and alternative ways in which they can display those natural behaviours that they want to, so they don't feel like they have to be suppressed, and they don't end up with learned helplessness and reactivity.
And I think you're absolutely right, Jordan. And I think a lot of that is educating the UK public on where that dog has come from, what its expectations are, what its lifestyle has been like, so that when it comes into the UK, we kind of just expect it. We're like, drop it, sit, be a good dog. And the dog's like, really sorry, don't know you at all, didn't ask to be here at all. So really hard. And then naturally, positive rehabilitation training, counter conditioning, desensitization, they take a while. They take time. I've had one of my clients that has spent 7 months in the house with their dog. She's only just been able to touch it. And it won't go out for a walk at all. And actually there I'm seeing a huge amount of flexibility on that human to be able to go, I will cope with this because I love this dog. But that is not the case for most people. Most people aren't going to have that kind of time. So, and then they'll move to aversives, as Jordan says, because they feel like a quick fix. I'm just gonna, shock or choke this dog into doing as it's told, and that is abuse on abuse, I would say.
Thank you, Hannah, and also really good to hear that, because I do actually have a rescue from Romania who's very scared about leaving the house after 3 years still. So I'm glad I'm not the only one. But another follow-up question that really relates to this: what do we class as a good home for a rescue that might need some serious experience and dog knowledge? And are there enough of those potential homes and enough interest for them? I suppose that's really a joint question from a behavioural point of view, and for some of the rescues out there.
Honestly, from my perspective, there's not enough homes, and I think that often we ask too much from potential adopters, especially first-time adopters that don't really know what they're getting involved in. And for certain dogs, I would like to see much greater investment in more free roaming sanctuaries in the countries where the dogs have come from, because I think that they'd be happier and able to display more natural behaviors in that environment. Obviously, you know, it depends on the case and how serious and severe that case is, the level of socialization they've had with people, also the amount of freedom that they're used to, and how they then adapt. And if they are displaying really serious behaviors, then the impacts that has on the society around them, I suppose, is all the things that you have to consider.
I agree. I think that from my perspective of seeing these pets in clinic, you know, people who rescue dogs from abroad, or people who rescue any dog, they're trying to do the right thing, but they don't necessarily, nobody really wants to take on a project. They want a dog that they can enjoy as a dog. They want a pet. And I think a lot of these dogs do come with issues that are far beyond the capability of your average pet owner, and neither is that what they want either. But then they find themselves kind of stuck with this dog that they've invested a huge amount of emotional energy in, and it's not really turned out to be what they want. And I think there is a huge amount of suffering, I don't know whether that's the right word, but from the owners of these dogs who really struggle, but who don't want to give up because they've invested such a lot of emotion in the dog and in the process and in the principle of rescuing. But really, they should never have been put in that position in the first place. And if the dog wasn't suitable to be a pet, it shouldn't really have, in my opinion, been rehomed as a pet. And I think a lot of these dogs aren't suitable for the vast majority of pet owners.
And I think as a charity, we try and really match the dog to the owners, not the other way around. So if you have someone approach us and say, you know, looking for a dog, I really check out their, you know, their lifestyle. Some dogs, when we go over to Romania and we take we take food out to feed the dogs, I call them the field dogs, I would say, go and see the field dogs, and they all live in around the factories or the fields, and they all act in little packs. And we go out with the girl there that helps us find the packs of dogs, and she knows exactly every dog, which pack it's in, and they're so used to living like that. We don't rehome those dogs. We let them live in the packs. We provide shelter and food for those dogs. To bring one of those dogs over would just be, and to put it in the, you know, people's houses nowadays are quite small, the gardens are small, that dog is trapped. We don't look to rehome those dogs. I think they've got a better, happier life, as long as they're left alone and not picked up and put in the public shelters, because that's horrendous then for them. And when they are put in the public shelters, Madalena goes to find them and gets them out and puts them back into their packs by the factories. They're happier like that. So we're really careful the dogs to bring over. Not all dogs are suitable to be brought over to the UK to live in houses. So we do really quite, you know, stringent home checks, chatting to the owners. But even after all that, I literally had a dog arrive 2 days ago. It literally, whilst I was sitting here, I've had a message to say it's bitten her dog and she wants it gone. And it's a beautiful pointer. We've had all the checks done in Romania. He's one from Red Panda. Raluca is amazing with her dogs. He was absolutely bulletproof dog. And, you know, I've explained everything to the adopter. Do not walk the dog for 2 weeks. Let it settle in the house. The dog wasn't, she messaged me to say that he enjoyed his walk. And I explained, I said, please don't walk him. Let him just settle. No. And I've had a message now to say he's bitten and he needs to be rehomed. So it's never easy, but we're here. We do it because we're passionate. We're volunteers, as everyone here is. We're all here because we're passionate about the dogs and to help and to try and make a difference in countries that, you know, when you're involved with the rescuers and you see them, they plead saying, please, I found these feral cats that need spaying, you know, so we try and help as much as we can with fundraising. And we, you know, I'm sorry if we try to sell ourselves as a charity. We're very keen to raise awareness and funding to help these people that are so desperate to, you know, for us to help them with their problems.
I think maybe one issue we're going to come up against is that people who choose to engage in things like this, especially rescues, are the ones who are doing it well. So, you know, all of you were doing fantastic jobs. Unfortunately, you're not bringing over 50,000 dogs a year, but somebody is. And I suspect the majority of them are not being given the individual attention. And that is where these problems are coming from. Present company absolutely accepted that it's the ones who don't wish to engage who really are probably causing a lot of the issues here.
Yeah, and we also haven't spoken yet about the damage that can be done on the journey over and the age in which these dogs sometimes travel. And it's not all dogs, but it's some dogs, and some are being journeying across continents right in the middle of their second fear period, which is a really damaging time to be stuck in the back of a van with loads of other dogs barking, going mental. The level of stress and the damage that then does to the dog in a real critical point of its life when it's becoming a teenager and is already going to be a bit of a handful because the hormones are everywhere, and that imprints, and it's something that people ought to be really observant of and make sure dogs aren't traveling during these critical socialization periods.
I would also say that then that has another effect about, you know, a lot of my owners, I say to them, okay, what we need to do is we need to go somewhere super quiet. So we're going to pop the dog in the car and we're going to drive to a field where there's very little going on. And they go, can't get him in the car. And I go, of course you can't, because they've had a really long journey and that's been horribly traumatizing for the dog. So then they're stuck. I'm saying, okay, you need to go really slowly, take walks really slowly, but they live in a city. So they are really stuck between a rock and a hard place here. And I would say, I think all rescue centres would say, you know, the perfect owner, the perfect rescuer is just so rare, because we all want to help, don't we? And I know I used to work for a UK rescue centre, and a lot of the time when people are thinking about getting a dog, you just get rose-tinted glasses about how wonderful that's going to be. And often you're not even listening when people are giving you advice. You're like, yeah, it's going to be my best friend. It's going to be the best thing ever. What could possibly go wrong?
And I'd just add that people don't actually even listen at the application process. We actually put rehoming profiles up and we actually state, look, it's not going to be good with kids or it's not going to be good with other dogs. And people just will not accept that. You know, they challenge us over this. Why is this the case? You know, this can't be the case. And, you know, it's amazing the amount of arguments we actually have to have with the general public saying, look, we're trying to be responsible and ensure there's not accidents in a home, but they don't want to know. So this is the battle, and this makes finding the good homes even harder.
Yeah. And actually, I think there's something to be said here for viral education. I was absolutely fascinated with what you said, Lucinda, about Facebook algorithms, because they are very intense and intriguing. If you've ever watched The Social Dilemma, you know, AI can actually produce a trend in our behavior. We'll start to see more of something and then we'll start to behave on that algorithm. So I do think it is really fascinating, that angle, but actually that could be used to educate a lot of people very quickly. And even something as simple as saying, could you cope with this? If you can answer yes to all of these questions, could you cope with not ever walking your dog? Could you cope with never touching your dog? Could you cope with your dog being aggressive to every stranger that comes into your house? And answer some of these questions. And I think you'd find most people would just say, you know, I can't cope with that. I could cope with that for 6 months. And this is the difficulty with not understanding how dogs' brains work. A lot of people think, I'll get a dog, I'll give it love, and it'll just get better. But actually, that's not how the brain is wired. If they don't get socialization to all of those sights and sounds that I know loads of your rescues are giving them access to, which is great. You know, hoovers and noises in the home between 8 and 16 weeks old. If they don't get it then, they're really going to have a much longer recovery rate from stress. So it's not that they can't learn, it's that when something freaks them out, it takes them so much longer to recover. And then something else will happen and then they'll freak out about that. So this is the big issue, I think.
Well, I have been listening very carefully with all the things that you have been speaking. And I must say that this is not my experience. I am from Spain. And I must say, well, we have a dog behaviorist on our board of trustees, and she's already working with us here at the shelter. So whenever we have a dog with a problem, we never send the dog abroad. Never, ever, at all. Because we treat the problems here. We have rescue dogs from what we call here in Spain realas, and those are hunting dogs that they used to hunt in packs. So, but normally those dogs, they have good behavior. Sometimes when you have a hoarder, also we have rehome dogs. My dogs, they are complaining now. And all those dogs, we normally treat them in the shelter, and we look for foster homes here. And talking about also about, I really don't understand why nobody is going to send dogs that can be put to sleep in England or wherever it is. We have a lot of experience rehoming dogs abroad, and okay, sometimes we have problems, but also the organizations there, they have the backup needed to take the dog back and to re-educate the dog and provide to re-educate the people. So we, the organizations from abroad, we are trying to do our best. Because even when I must say that I believe in euthanasia, if one of my dogs needs to be euthanized, I prefer to do it here, not to send the dog 15,000 kilometers away to have the dog euthanized there. So we are not going to allow to do that, never ever at all.
I think going back to what Hannah said as well about the social media algorithms and people and what people perceive and owners, potential owners perceive their dog's behavior is going to be, is probably the biggest thing that we have to tackle. I think that those perceptions that dogs are either little people in fluffy coats or wolves in fluffy coats, and they're neither. They're dogs and they have their own beautiful languages that they speak, and we just have to learn it. And we have to change that perception of what a dog really is and our expectations as a society of what we expect from them. You know, they live such restricted lives now by comparison to what they used to not many generations ago. And it's a huge level of stress and pressure to be putting upon them.
Thank you. Excellent. And just to kind of flag up something that Rebecca had mentioned earlier about adopters, I think it's crucially important to educate adopters so that they know, you know, where these dogs are coming from and the types of situations they've been in. I'm actually a trustee of a charity, and you know, it's amazing how much people probably don't realize they need, you know, a few days to kind of settle into their new home, and they may not want to be cuddled right away or come out of their crate right away. So I think it's crucially important that whilst we do, you know, test these animals and see behaviorists and all these sorts of things, but equally, I think education for the adopters is just as important, so they know what they're getting themselves into before they do adopt these dogs from overseas. Thank you for the answers to the question. The next question is about the dual microchipping. So somebody would like to know how you go about dual microchipping the pets. I'm not sure if anybody is.
I think that might have been me that. Yeah, I think that might have been me that brought it up in my slides. So I think there's a few companies that offer it. We use one called Avid. Just means when we register the dogs pre their arrival in the UK, their microchips are dual registered. So at the time of when they arrive, they're registered to the rescue twice, basically. And then once they are adopted, we change the primary keeper over to the owners. And I believe once you're registered on one database, you know, no one else can transfer it onto another database without authorization of the owner or the keeper.
Thank you. Okay. We have a question. Do you think that big UK charities like Battersea and the Dogs Trust should be providing support, whether financially or even if they were to bring dogs over and adopt them out via their centers? Or, you know, should they help to fund neutering programs for these animals? I know specifically in Romania, there's a huge stray population issue. What does everybody think about these sorts of?
Well, can I just say, I've spoken to Dogs Trust many a time, and they do actually help with spay and neuter campaigns abroad. I don't think the bigger charity should be bringing any more dogs over. In fact, I think we should be bringing less dogs over. I know that when we go out to Romania, and we've been many, many times, it's heartbreaking, and it's very tempting to just pick up all the dogs and bring them over. But actually, you know, we are, as mentioned, there's so many issues and so many problems. And if we just brought less dogs over, did more spay and neutering, then the issue would be sorted at the core, and we wouldn't have the problems that we're having. But I do know Dogs Trust do actually help many other charities with spay and neuter campaigns already. So
thank you.
I would just add that a member of the Scooby team has been onto the Dogs Trust kennel management training programme. It's pretty tricky. I mean, language barriers are an issue, and you have to go through quite a rigorous application process, but it's a very good course. And I would echo what Victoria said. I don't think, you know, with Scooby, we think the problem should be solved at the source, which is why our presentation covered prosecutions of animal cruelty perpetrators and education about animal and pet ownership. Is very important, I think, to solve the issue in the country. And until we can do that, we're grateful for the few homes we can find, but really I think we can't be exporting problems.
Another question from the chat is whether it's too difficult to adopt a dog in the UK, and that's one of the reasons why there is more demand from adopters to look at rehoming centres abroad, and whether there needs to be a joined up conversation around the adoption process in the UK.
I'm going to quickly chip in on this because, and this is a big issue. I think you're absolutely right. It's difficult to get a rescue dog, and that's because there's not many homes that are suitable for the dogs that actually most of these amazing animal charities that in the UK do have a great deal more funding and support. We've invested in animal welfare in the UK really heavily for 100 years or so, and it's great. But this is the issue, is that a lot of our charities will say, right, these are our very special dogs, and we're only going to put them in exactly the right home because we don't want to see these problems happen again and again. So the hardest thing here is that we live in the Amazon generation, don't we? We want it yesterday. We want it tomorrow. Now, I've decided I want a rescue dog. That's definitely going to arrive in a brown package tomorrow. And actually, we need to again, just educate. And do we need to soften the restrictions? I think that is entirely up to those particular rescue centres. But I would say that if somebody said, listen, this isn't your dog, and these are the reasons why, it's super important to listen to them, because they are experienced. They're not trying to stop you getting dogs, they're trying to stop you getting bitten. So just bear that in mind.
I think this is the problem. We have got so many applicants, especially over the last year, looking to adopt with young children. I mean, I would not be overestimating when I say over the last year, we have probably had about 900 applicants asking, have you got a dog suitable with children under 6 years old? Now, there's a reason dogs are often in rescue, and that's because there's maybe been incidents in the home, or in our case, 80 to 90% of the dogs we take in are from UK pounds, so they have no history, and we will not rehome them with young children when we don't have that history. So we're trying to explain that to applicants all the time, and it gets frustrating. You know, we're trying to say, look, we're looking out for the welfare of the dog, we're looking out for the welfare of your family, we're looking out for the welfare of the public at large. And so, yes, they get very frustrated with us, and, you know, they think we're being difficult when we're just trying to be responsible.
I agree with everything you just said. I foster and work with reactive dogs. That's what I do every day. And the number of fostered dogs I've had that are struggling with severe reactivity, where owners still think, or potential owners still think they can apply with young children and don't really understand why, and then get really upset, is a bit mind-boggling, because obviously the rescue has to take into consideration the safety of the children and the well-being of the dog. I think it's realistic expectations again, and I think sometimes we don't have realistic expectations of dogs and welfare organisations and kind of all of the above. And everyone needs credit for doing such a wonderful job with what they do. It's not an easy environment to work in.
I mean, we don't have a blanket policy as such, so we don't sort of say, you know, no under 10s or anything like that. I know some bigger rescues do have sort of more blanket rules, but if there is a suitable dog, we will rehome with young children if we know it's got a good history with young children. But, you know, unfortunately, they're few and far between, and we're getting even more applications now for people who've got young children and cats, and that is a nightmare.
Yeah, don't get me started on cats. They'll say, is it cat friendly? So is your cat dog friendly?
I would just
it all takes time.
Sorry, for the other end of the spectrum. So we've had, again, I told you we don't have masses of experience yet, but we have I think we've had 4 elderly people over the age of 70 say they've been rejected by more traditional rescues. And, you know, if you tell me when I'm 73 that I can't have a dog and I'm compos mentis, I won't be very impressed. So we assess the home really carefully, and the family backup and the dog. And it's been a roaring success for the 4 elderly people and the dog. So in answer to the original question, yes, sometimes the rejects from the conventional rescues here have actually been a blessing for us and for the dog. Yeah,
we're the same. Our best adopters are the, you know, healthy retired couples who are turned away because of their age. And I've had a dog, well, 9 years we've had some of our dogs that have been in homes, and I always worry, I think, oh, you know, hopefully we try and match the dog's age to the people, and actually the dog has died and lived a very happy life within the last 9 years, and the owner's still going strong. And we had doubts thinking, oh, you know, hopefully it'll work out, and we haven't had. So we've had some very successful adoptions with elderly people. My mum's 82 now, and she's got 2 of my rescues, and I keep saying, hold on, mum, because I don't want to end it. I've got 3 rescues. So yeah, I think that they make the best adopters because they've had a lifetime of experience with animals, and they've got the time and the patience to put into the dogs.
And I think that goes back to the importance of proper protocol as well. If you're doing a home check, you can actually, you know, a physical home check, you can go in and see a 75-year-old who may still be really fit and healthy, probably fitter and healthier than I am, you know, who's more than capable of managing, you know, the right dog. So, you know, it's going in there with a sort of open mind, you know, and not just saying, no, you're over a certain age. No, you can't have a dog. We don't do that.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Well, another question. One day asking people from Holland and Germany, why do they rehome our dogs from Spain? And the answer is because the dogs from Spain are the behaviorist a lot better than the dogs from the Germany and Holland. Maybe you have your dogs really spoiled and this is why they're difficult. But I can tell you, I live with a lot of galgos, and I have never been bitten by a single galgo. We rescue around 1,200, 1,300 dogs per year. So I have never been bitten. So I must say, Spanish dogs, they are really well behaved.
I'm just going to throw that might be just because of the weather. In Spain, if I'm honest.
I don't know.
Maybe we all have to get a Spain rescue dog instead then. I have another question for you all. So this question is, there seem to be lots of charities or rescues that have been set up to help Romanian dogs in kill shelters. And obviously this could probably lead to some different sorts of behavioral issues. Is there any way that we can support them, you know, as well as supporting them and helping them find the right homes?
In terms of support,
sorry. Sorry, I was just trying to say, when they say we're supporting them, what does that mean then? Who wants to support? The general public, are you saying? So I didn't quite understand the question.
Sorry, I'm not sure, to be honest. Maybe the UK to help the Romanian kill shelter dogs. Is there support that can be offered? I'm not really sure what.
I think food and medical care just help in that way. I mean, we send out monthly packages of food and medical care. So I think you know, we can't bring all the dogs over here, but if you do want to help the dogs that are out there, of course, that's needed and wanted. So in any way that you can, really. So food and medical care is always a way. And again, I know I go on about spay and neuter all the time, but if we just sterilised every single dog that's in these countries, then that we wouldn't have this issue of having so many dogs, you know, needing help. So we need to address the root problem, and that is to sterilise them all.
And also to add, I mean, we help mainly in Craiova in Romania, and one of the public shelters, which is known as a kill shelter that you're talking about, is the Bresta shelter. We have had an ongoing court case with Bresta, the people that run Bresta, taken that up with the government there, and it's been ongoing for, well, how long, Victoria? It's a few years now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we raised a lot of money. We went into, I don't know if anyone's been into the public shelters in Romania. They are horrendous. We took out some dogs at one point, and a little dog called Rosie, who's a little Jack Russell type. She had to be operated on straight away. She had a very infected mass in her stomach from a botched spay, which is very common. When we first started bringing dogs over, the part of the procedure in Bresta, they have to spay them. They want to spay them, spay or neuter them before they leave the shelter. Now we have to fight really hard so they don't, because the vet there, unlike Mark, who's brilliant, we named him the butcher vet, because they basically butcher the dogs. And we've had a lot of problems with dogs that were brought over. One that I had, Zoe, which I mentioned earlier, she also had a botched spay, where they'd left part of her ovaries in, so she looked like she was, you know, menstruating or whatever. I don't know the word for it if it's a dog, but anyway, so it was, she basically had to be reoperated on when I had her. So yeah, there was, and we have sutures that were left in and caused infections, so horrendous problems. So this has been an ongoing case that we've had. So basically it's raising awareness of what's going on in these public shelters, because it is horrific. It is horrific what we've seen, and you know, we've tried to make a difference over the years, and yeah, it's Romania, you know, it's.
I would love it if somebody would post about lots of different free roaming sanctuaries that exist for feral dogs, because we could do a really huge drive to get some real funding out there to do something like that. I think it would be fantastic, and it would benefit so many dogs' welfare. I think it would just be really valuable. And if it's something that someone wants to post afterwards somewhere that we can all share, it would be really, really very helpful, I think.
I'm quite happy as well to raise it with the ambassador for Romania. I'm vice chair of that group, so it might be something that we can link with APDAWG for a future meeting, to some work with the ambassador, and maybe be raising these issues in Parliament a bit more, because I'm sure the public are really interested in them and want them to be raised in Parliament, so that the Foreign Office can do as much as possible, and that we can try to start, you know, speaking a bit more about it. I've not heard this raised in Parliament very much at all, but I think it's probably an issue that there's great public concern about, just like, you know, in South Korea as well.
Yeah, sure, and I think it would be very valuable to also raise. It would be very valuable to also raise general regulation of rescues and sanctuaries, and some kind of look at that, because it's not the matter of whether it's foreign rescues doing something wrong, English rescues doing something wrong. There's people doing it well and right and wrong on every side of the spectrum of the coin. It's about making sure that there's some kind of regulation and agreement of protocols and practices. And I think that's and it's mandatory. I think that's what's important. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there.
Yeah, I wanted to say something about the kill shelters and all of that in Romania. I know that here in Cluj-Napoca we don't kill our dogs that are in the public shelter. And I know that the kill shelters, if you are sponsoring the dog and paying for their food, then they won't kill the dog.
That's correct.
So they are killing the dog just because they don't have the funds to keep the dog in the shelter. So if you sponsor a dog, by buying their or sending money to buy their food for a month, they won't kill the dog that is in the public shelter. Here in Cluj-Napoca, they don't have these bad behaviors. And regarding, you said, Rebecca, you said something about taking the dog without being spayed from the public shelter. Again, the law states that you have to have the dog spayed or neutered in order to get him out, him or her out. So I don't think that it's a problem of taking the dog before they bosh the surgery. I think that it's something that's really important, and that I always said, there are so many trainers and so many good quality vets that know how to do a decent and awesome small procedure. And I think that the key here would be to have those vets learn the procedure. So the teaching of the procedure, a well-done procedure, would be more spread, not only a couple of good vets in Romania. No, we need more vets. So we need to teach them how to do a proper and good spay, so that he can do a lot of spays in that kill shelter. Instead, we are taking a few out and asking them not to spay them, but still the problem remains. He is butchering other animals that we cannot take all of them out from the kill shelter. So I think key here would be educating the vets from the kill shelters.
Yeah, definitely something that needs to be changed. Yeah.
Or just
we've
can I
had
just
so many
add to
cases
that?
of really...
In all fairness, actually, this particular vet, he didn't want to be taught anything. He actually didn't care about the animals at all. So yeah, I think you have to work with the right.
It's just money for them, wasn't it, that they get paid?
Yeah,
for
it's just a quick buck, really. But yeah, you just have to work with the right vets, and we tried to get that particular vet removed from that kill shelter because he was botching up so many dogs.
Yeah, I think this should be included in the law, that every vet should know how to do a proper spay or neuter. And I think this could help, like in the long run, it could help a lot.
Mark, I think we've got through all the questions now. I don't think, unless Tiffany can find any, I think we've got through all the...
Yeah, I think we've got a lot covered, and we've definitely made progress, which is what APDAWG's all about. So unless Tiffany can find one last golden nugget to share with the group.
I think
no
we're
pressure.
all good. There's lots of lovely feedback, you know, people saying they're so thrilled to see all of the rescues and the wonderful work you're all doing. So I'll share that golden nugget with you all.
That is a lovely golden nugget to share, and I thank you. Okay, so Lisa's, as people have seen in the chat, Lisa's going to put her kids to sleep, so I will wrap up. I think it's been very interesting. I've got to say, personally, it's been one of the hardest APDAWGs to pull together, because some of the behaviour of some of the organisations was, let's being polite, questionable when I was trying to put this together. We've had some rescues that I thought were some of the best, just refusing to even interact or reply. So it's been a scrabble. I can't thank the people who have come out and turned out tonight and spoken enough on behalf of APDAWG, because it is a controversial subject, or it can at least be. We've had some very interesting people and comments in the chat. People representing rescues, which I always thought was about empathy and compassion and kindness, really letting the side down, in my opinion, being quite distracting. And I think really, for the sake of the dogs, we all, and I say this every single meeting, we all have to prioritise their welfare. We all have to prioritise each other's welfare as well, and actually just work as a team to make the most progress as possible for the dogs. And it's a shame when people have to start picking on each other, because that just slows everything down, and if anything, makes everything go the wrong direction. So thanks everyone for tonight, especially our speakers. So thank you, Vicky, thank you, Jordan, thank you, Victoria and Rebecca. Muchas gracias, Fermin, in Spain, and also Lucinda. Sabrina, thank you. Mihaila, I've Googled thank you in Romanian, which is mulțumesc. I don't know if that's the way to pronounce it. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Julia. Thanks, Kat. And of course, thanks, Hannah. All your presentations were fantastic. I know we said 5 minutes each, and I know how hard that is to stick to, but I think we've gone way over 10 o'clock now. So I think we've kind of got, we had quite a good discussion. So everyone did brilliantly. Thank you to obviously Lisa Cameron, who's putting the kids to bed. And thanks to Tiffany for, again, being my co-pilot. And thanks to Paula as well, both from UK Centre for Animal Law, who support us, and we couldn't do it without you guys. Thanks to Our Dogs as well, who support us too. The next Our Dog meeting will be in the autumn. We're going to take a break. Make sure you're signed up for the free newsletter on our homepage so you can hear about when that's going to be. Thanks for choosing to share your evenings in the last few months with APDAWG. This, I think, is our 4th one in a row since December, and every single one we've had some fantastic discussions. We've made some progress, and that for me is what it's all about: collaboration. If we all pull together, I am a broken record and I don't care. If we all pull together, behaviorists, charities, people doing stuff brilliantly, vets, we can make progress. It's as simple as that. Whatever resources we have, if we combine them, we are unstoppable. So thank you to everyone. Looking forward to seeing everyone in the autumn, maybe even in person. Who knows? The next meeting could be in Portcullis House, or maybe even in the Palace of Westminster in that big committee room we did for the trainers behaviourist meeting. And most importantly, stay safe, come out of lockdown carefully, be respectful to people, and yeah, can't thank everyone enough on behalf of Lisa and myself for another APDAWG. And yeah, let's see you in the autumn. Stay safe, and thank you everybody for coming together tonight for dogs.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Nice to meet you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.